If you wanted a wildcard round for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing, well, this would be it. It is the home of endurance racing. It is that beautiful racetrack in the northwest of France, dancing along the French countryside that we all know as Circuit de la Sarthe. And of course, Porsche and their history at this racetrack is pretty much second to none. A little bit later on, we have ourselves round number 9 of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. But first, we have ourselves, as ever, the Porsche All-Stars race. And my name is Will Vincent, not joined by Matt Trevette. We'll talk about that one in a moment's time. But instead, I'm joined here today by Connery Maddock. And Connery, well, we talk about wildcards. We talk about anything can happen in both the All-Stars and the Supercup. This is that round.
Yeah, certainly, as it's getting so late into the season. We're only 2 rounds away from sealing up yet another season in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, and of course, the first season of the Porsche All-Stars series. So, yeah, you know, it's come up on us so quickly here. You know, you kind of, it's one of those things where you want it to go on for more rounds and more rounds and more rounds, but unfortunately, all good things do have to come to an end.
They do, and after this, we've only got one more race to go, and that will be at the legendary Monza. But here today, Circuit de la Sarthe. This racetrack, of course, a fixed setup for the All-Stars drivers. They are running one of the iRacing fixed setups, which is the minimum downforce setup, basically, as little wing and as long a gear as we can possibly give them. And that's going to make for some entertaining racing. We're going to see some 2-wide action, maybe some 3-wide action down the Mulsanne. That run down into Indianapolis, though, I think that's where we're going to see fireworks.
Yeah, I think so too. It's going to be a similar race in some respects to what we saw at the Nürburgring with those strategic slipstream moves for track position coming down the Dortmunder Heuer. But here, it's going to be a lot more often where you'll be able to make those slipstream moves. So just because there's a pass for the race league going on, you don't have to think too much into it until, of course, we are on that final lap. So what a lot of these drivers will be doing is just trying to figure out where they need to be, sizing up each other in the beginning stages of the race to be able to make the best judgment possible in those final laps.
We're coming up to 2 o'clock sim time. The track temperature is 31.7 degrees Celsius, humidity 30%, and wind speeds, well, they're pretty much non-existent. That is absolutely perfect for racing here at Circuit de la Sarthe. And let's be honest, over the years, we have seen incredible conditions. We have seen horrific conditions. As we have a look then at your schedule, we have done 3 rounds of the championship in the 911 GT3 Cup car, 3 rounds of the championship in the 718 Cayman GT4 CS. This is our 3rd and final round in the 911 RSR machine. And the reason why I say that, Connery, drum roll please, we're going back to the Cup car to run at Monza. The outcome of the fan vote was very simple. They wanted to see the Cup car once again. So at Monza, we are going to have both the All-Stars and also the drivers in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup both running the same car.
Yep, we will. We've come full circle in this series. Well, of course, that was the car that we were competing in at the very start of this All-Star season, and it's only fitting that we end with it at Monza as well. Absolutely fantastic stuff indeed. Here's the summary, though, of what the All-Stars are having to deal with here. Of course, the race lengths have steadily gotten a little bit longer over the course of this season, Will, but 20 minutes of a sprint race, 25 minutes of a feature race. In some instances, a lot of time to think about things, but in others, you know, that time does go by quite quickly.
Indeed so. And qualifying, we'll talk about that one in a moment. Here are the point standings. As a reminder, these drivers are mainly running race to race with credits for their sim racing kind of online streaming community. But we have got a championship running as well. Emily Jones, 306 points. She's almost got an unassailable lead there over Dan Suzuki, who stands on 239. Jardier versus Dan Suzuki. That's going to be fascinating to watch both here and at Monza. Sabia Sanchez, Hockey 360 in 4th. Pierre-Olivier Valette in 5th place. Jimmy B in 6th. Matt Campbell, we haven't seen him for a while, unfortunately, as these works drivers are getting more and more back into their regular schedules. Then Quick Gabby, she unfortunately cannot be with us for the 2nd race in a row. Matthew Vaca in 9th, and Gamer Muscle rounds out your top 10. Let's talk about qualifying then very quickly, because it says 3 laps in 10 minutes. The reality is it's one lap, because of the fact that by the time these drivers get around the racetrack, by the time they get themselves a flying lap in, they've got one chance in order to do that. And if they don't, they're going to be starting at the rear of the field. Normally, that'd be a big issue. Less so here because of the draft.
Well, D2 iRacing, you know, the developers being very well aware of that situation. Of course, these guys do get a slightly abbreviated initial out lap here. They actually start just before the final couple of chicanes. So it's less one lap, more like kind of 2 laps if these guys just remain out there in terms of their qualifying right here. So it's going to be at least 1 or 2 more opportunities to get that fast lap in than you would otherwise with a full pace lap. But you can see that none of the times, of course, have come in just yet. We are still only 2 minutes lapsed in this session. So another 2 minutes or so, just shy of that, and we'll start to see the first of the flying laps come in.
Indeed, we're looking at Jimmy Broadbent then in the 00 car. Of course, Jimmy Broadbent, probably his biggest viewership ever was at this racetrack, Connery, when his team got themselves victory in the 24-hour race. That was a part of the iRacing special events last year. I almost said it, but I didn't. And for Jimmy's team, of course, that was a highlight really for them of doing so many endurance races. And Jimmy, after having a couple of great races recently, would love to really carry on that momentum here.
Of course, Jimmy in particular had done a little bit of real world testing this morning. So he's, he said before this race he was relatively exhausted and his neck was hurting. So fortunately, you don't have those sorts of G-forces here in sim racing compared to the real world. So as long as his arms are fine, I think everything should be okay there for Jimmy Broadbent. There's Dan Suzuki, of course, one of those challenges in terms of the championship. Still in the championship, but coming into today against Emery, but Emery to have a quite considerable lead at this point. She could mathematically seal it here today, but of course we won't be able to officially say that until a moment.
Indeed so. As we have a look then at Suzuki once again, heading into Indianapolis. One of my favourite parts of the racetrack. And of course, the key thing is then we're actually going to go on board Emily Jones, the corner that she's just been through. Underneath the Porsche bridge she comes now in towards a set of corners named after a German car manufacturer. Don't know which one that is, but through the first left-hand kink she's going to come now. And in this RSR car, of course, barrels of downforce normally. Less so today because of what we've done in terms of the minimum downforce, but actually, when you do a long endurance race at a place like Circuit de la South, you generally want to take off as much downforce as you can anyway, Connery, because of the fact that you are basically full throttle for so long in this lap.
Yeah, the fact that you just want to reduce as much drag as possible just kind of outweighs the benefits of having a little bit more downforce and getting the better corner speed through the Porsche curves. But coming through the final couple of chicanes now, a little bit, perhaps quite a handful of oversteer there for Emery as she heads her way across the line. You had the first couple of provisional qualifying times actually come in, and that was the fastest of them there from Emery. She goes provisional pole position. For the moment, we've got 5 minutes left remaining in the session. Those are the times on the left-hand side of your screen. 8 drivers have set themselves times. At the moment, we've got 15 in total.
Indeed, as we now look on board with Borja Zarzo in the number 56, I would love to know what Borja is actually wearing today, because that has become one of the fan favourite parts of the race, kind of figuring out what Borja is wearing. I know that Jardier is wearing a No Punterino t-shirt today. I haven't had the chance to go through all of the drivers, but we'll keep you up to date with that one, and hopefully we'll get that one on your side soon. Dan Suzuki, 3rd place, 0.45 back from Emily Jones. Jardier in 4th, just over 1 second back, and of course now this will be their final lap from pretty much about here. And if they are not started a lap, they will have to be getting a move on soon as we turn our attention over to Tony Kanaan in the number 14 car. Number 14, of course, is a car that he ran for AJ Foyt Racing when he was in the IndyCar series. As Tony Kanaan has not yet set himself a time. He's working himself, though, through the Porsche curves right now, Connery.
Yeah, he is, and well, hopefully he can get this lap time in just to, just to get a banker in. Although saying that, he is running, yeah, it would be his only time because he won't have the full lap time remaining left in the session to be able to come across the line again and set a better lap time. So this is going to be the one chance that Kanaan will be able to get himself a qualifying time in. Just 2 more apexes to go before he launches out of that final corner and gets himself up across the line. What sort of lap time is it going to be for Tony Kanaan? It's a 3:49.107. Good enough for mid-pack.
Yep, mid-pack then for TKP number 5 for the time being. We turn our attention away from Tony Kanaan. That is his qualifying pretty much all said and done, and over to the number 56 car of Borjazazo once again on his second fast qualifying lap. Just under a 1/10.5 of a second from Emily Jones was Zaza last time by, as he now enters the Porsche curve section of the racetrack. Actually, I'm completely missing myself here. This is Jaroslav Honzik of Jardier, Czech Republic, as he works through into the Porsche curves, and that left-hander, probably the hardest part of the Porsche curve, to get that car settled around there. From here on in, it gets a little bit easier because the main part of the speed has been taken away, but you want to be really careful not to push out wide here, otherwise that will completely invalidate your lap. Then just a couple more corners left for Jardier to go, who is, at time of writing, just over 1 second back from Emily Jones as they come into that final chicane, double final chicane as it really is here at Circuit de la Sarre. But a lot of oversteer then on the exit of the chicane for Jardier, and he is not he's not able to improve his position, but he is able to improve his time up to just over 3/4 of a second back now from Emily Jones, whose fastest lap time is a 3:47.619. Borjazazo has gone faster, Connery, but not quite close enough.
Yeah, and I just saw, if I get my enunciation correct, I just saw Jimmy Broadbent jump up into P5 after a good time as well. So great job from the man in the shed. Let's see if anyone else is out there to be able to come across the line and finish their lap. Maxine was just finishing a lap, but I don't think she improved her position at all. There wasn't a valid lap from her. It's less the off tracks that are the problem at this circuit and more the slowdown penalties. That's the philosophy that iRacing has gone to here with the track limits at Circuit de la Sarre. It's more likely to give you a slowdown penalty than it is to give you an instant point in some places. So that's just one of those things where you do have to be very careful, especially on the first lap here, Will, where the slowdown penalties can be a lot more ferocious than they were a couple of laps into the race.
Indeed so, and there are a couple of tracks in iRacing. Donington Park is one that always sticks out to me, which is just as similar. We're down to our last minute then of qualifying, and 2 drivers have not yet set themselves a qualifying time. The number 15 car, Hydro, has not set a time, and then Cyanide hasn't done so either. We're looking at Hydro right now. Julian Cisaboris in that number 15 car will be very close. I'm not sure he's going to get to the line at time. 15 seconds to go. It's going to be a push, but I think that he might not make it with 7-6. Well, he's definitely not going to make it now. Boom, he's into the wall.
Hopefully the one and only time here today for Hydro as the qualifying session does end, and Emily Jones all position with Borjazazo on the front row. So 2 very, very neon green cars lock out the front row there, Will.
Yeah, and we saw a quick look at Barney. He's going to be waving the green flag for the start of this race in a moment's time. But let's have a look then at your starting grid for heat number 1 here in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports All-Stars event. Emily Jones and Borjazazo on that front row of the grid. On row number 2 will be Dan Suzuki and Xavier Sanchez. Row number 3 will be Jaroslav Honzik and Jimmy Broadbent. And then row number 4, Tony Kanaan and Pierre-Oliver Valette. Matt Malone and Mathieu Vaca in row number 5, with Will Ford and Maxime Bushman in row number 6. And then at the rear of your field, you've got James West, Gaming Muscle, and Julian Cisaboris in row 7. And Amir Thacker did not set himself a qualifying time. 2 drivers didn't, 13 drivers did. And they're all aptly going to be lining themselves up in and around the Porsche curbs to get themselves running then for this, the first of our 2 races, which will be 20 minutes long, Connery.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 minutes sounds like a pretty long race when it's when it comes to it, but again, these go very quickly because it's just such a close competition amongst all of these drivers where you're having so much fun, and time flies when you're having fun, and all of a sudden the checker flag is out, so you got to pay attention to it. But you can see the drivers just lining them up just before the Porsche curves here, due to the fact that taking a full pace lap here will be a little bit excessive, so therefore we are going to be starting most of the way through. So it's only a short little moment here behind the Porsche pace car before we get the green flag racing going.
Well, the only reason why they'd like to have a full pace lap around here is it gives Eduardo Freitas the opportunity to give the 15-page long edict to all the drivers. We don't have to do that here. In fact, our briefing only lasted about 6 minutes for this series, which hopefully means they're all going to be well behaved. We mentioned it at the top of the broadcast, those of you wondering where the dulcet tones of our Canadian resident, Matt Trevettes. Unfortunately, he's gone and broken his wrist. He might be back for the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing a little bit later on. Coverage of that, in fact, immediately after this race, and the first green flag in exactly 1.5 hours from now. But if not, Connery will be standing in as I get sent back down to the dungeon after we've completed the All-Stars here. But for those of you wondering where Matt is, he's down in the emergency room right now. And Matt, we hope that the breaking of the wrist isn't too bad, and we hope that you're back with us before you know it. In the meanwhile, as the drivers are now just entering the final portion of the racetrack, the drivers got to be careful here. The reason for that being that the pace car will dance on towards pit road right before the forward chicane, as we see the beautiful tricolor being displayed there by what would be the French Air Force over the start-finish line. Barney looking on in amazement as we've now got the pace car actually does go through the forward chicane. I take that one back because it's going to dance right to the right in a moment's time. And the field, there they are. They've got themselves a couple more moments to go. Going to go side by side through the last part of the chicane. Wonderful look then at the start finish line at Le Mans. Green flag in the air. We are racing here at Circuit de la Sarthe, and Emily Jones gets herself even a good start and immediately able to pull out a bit of a gap over Borges-Arzo. Dan Suzuki third, but meanwhile we have got battles going on down P4, P5. That is Jardine at height 360. A bit of a lock-up then as they work themselves through the first corner first time, and side-by-side going on right now between Jimmy Broadbent and Williams Heikki 360, but all 15 of our drivers, Connery, are pointing in the right direction as they basically get themselves onto the ball sign for the first time.
Couldn't ask for much of a better start than that one. No one, like you said, pointing the wrong direction, no one getting to the barriers, but someone does have a slowdown penalty, and that is Tony Kanaan having to back well out of things here, coming up towards the Mulsanne straight and just having to let everyone go down his left-hand side. So that's what I was talking about just a little bit earlier on there, Will, with the fact that if you get a slowdown penalty here on the first lap, then it's going to be a whole bunch of time that you have to be given up. Not, more than you would do usually. And there's now an instant in through the first Mulsanne chicane with Maxime going around and dropping down the order.
Yep, so for Maxime, she has got incidents earlier, and I've got some incidents of my own right now. I've just lost my production feed, but I will try and do the best I can for a moment with timing and scoring, as we've got ourselves Emily Jones leading the way over Borges-Arzo. For Tony Kanaan, that would have been down at Tetre Rouge, which is that last corner before you come onto the Mulsanne. Back in the day, of course, if you messed up there, you would be suffering the pain for over 2.5 miles. With the chicanes down on the Mulsanne, it's a little bit easier than what it was. However, at the front of your field, the gap is up already to about 0.3 of a second. Down at P3, P4 though, Borges-Arzo, down Suzuki Jardier, this is what we were kind of expecting, Connery. This was really those guys getting into that drafting situation. We really wanted to see, does, front to back drafting work? Does the side draft work? How will the gear ratio stack up in racing form?
Well, we get our first sign of it as they're continuing on their way on this very long stretch down in towards the Mulsanne corner. very big braking zone down into here, and you're also having to well, into Indianapolis, excuse me. It's a similar sort of point to what I was going to make, though. You still have to be turning while trying to lean on the brakes a little bit to try and get the car slowed up, but these guys now heading their way through our Nage corner. Everything clean and tidy, everything very, very respectful. The drivers are giving each other the racing room, not leaning on the back, on the rear bumpers of each other all that much. So this is very clean driving so far, but I hazard a guess, once we get into the final few laps of this one, then it will be less than well, all love and roses between all of them.
Yeah, you're completely correct. And the good point to note, though, is all 15 drivers are still circulating on track. Track temp, by the way, we didn't mention this. It's 28.3 degrees Celsius right now. The wind speeds are still absolutely minimal, with humidity down at only 30%. So, in theory, this is proper draft city for these drivers, and they will be able to utilize that. Just a reminder, by the way, that on this coverage, we have got ourselves the Porsche Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. So don't go anywhere after the webcast, because those guys, the pro drivers, will be coming up immediately after this. Looking at the timing screen, the close battle really is P2, P3, Porsche Zazo, Dan Suzuki. That is going to be the one that I think is going to get really entertaining. But every time they do that, they are allowing Emily Jones to pull out a little bit more, And we saw this a little bit at the Nordschleife for a couple of weeks ago. You've got to think, when you come into these long straightaways, maybe a little bit of cooperation will help out a little bit, because otherwise, we know Emily Jones will literally dance off into the French sunset.
Jimmy went so wide there in the turn, just slightly before Tetra Rouge there, so he's going to have a pretty poor run here onto the Mulsanne. But you are absolutely right, Will. In some aspects here, you do have to work together. Of course, there are no teams in this championship, but still, you have to make friends out there, especially if you want to catch a group of cars ahead of you. You've got to slingshot off of each other to be able to get the best speed possible down the Mulsanne. Dan Suzuki's looking down the inside of Zazo in towards the first Mulsanne chicane. Zazo going to try and come back at him on the inside. That becomes the outside for the exit of the chicane, and they still have a decent overlap down the second portion of the Mulsanne.
They do indeed. As the thing that is going to be worth noting, I think, is how these packs will form and how these packs will develop over the course of this race. And the thing, of course, things like fastest lap mean absolutely nothing unless you're Emily Jones and you're actually pulling away out front. And side by side,
Suzuki. Dan Suzuki's around as he's in front of traffic as well. Everyone piles into this one. My word, Jardier got a whole piece of that. Matt Malone, too, came up on that one pretty hot as well. Massive smash here down towards the basically third of the Mulsanne. And that was a big moment, and it just allows Emery to continue to just get away from everyone now. She has this one on lockdown pretty much now after that incident.
Yeah, the gap's up to 3.6 seconds. So she's basically got this race in the bag already. Zajo and Suzuki, of course, I told you there could be fireworks between the two of them. Well, that was a prophecy come true. Dan Suzuki now down into 13th place on track. Of course, he will be aided a little bit by the inverse grid for the feature race, which comes up immediately after this. But replay coming up in a moment, Connery. As we have a look at the Vodafone replay, you're going to have to talk us through it.
Yep, I will. So here's the side-by-side down into the second Mulsanne chicane. Dan Suzuki going to try and gain the momentum around the outside here. He'll squeeze Borgia a little bit on the inside there, but it's just the coming together with the doors there. Depiello, the first one on the scene pretty much, that gets a little bit of contact of those cars behind. But yeah, it was tough racing coming down into that chicane. Just there's not enough room for two cars on the inside there, and they build each other. Yeah,
so let's take a deep breath, shall we, after all of that? Take a nice little deep breath, as we have got ourselves still 12.5 minutes remaining in this race. And at the front of the field, as I say, it is Emily Jones who has been leading the way. 4 seconds now is the gap. As we go down the field, however, it's going to be interesting to look. I think Heike 60, Ride Dilepolo, those three drivers is going to be interesting to look at. As there's a look then on board Borja Zazo, and it seems to be alternating race on race, Connery. One race he'll have himself proper tuxedo on the go. And then the alternating races, he goes nothing more than I can say than proper punk-style revolutionary.
Yeah, I do very much appreciate the style that Borja brings to the broadcast. He's probably got a whole bunch more style than any of us two have, that is for sure. We'll have to compete with Smith on that one with the flat cap, but but yeah, got to appreciate Borja. He's a fantastic driver as well. So he's all show and he's a fantastic racer out there as well.
Yep, now on board with Emily Jones, as cool and calm as collected, as she's just working herself virtually right now on the Mulsanne, and that gap is a 4.6 is pretty much going to be unassailable for her. And the thing is, you get to have fun racing when that gap is getting that big. Normally when you're in these really close battles, it does become, you know, it's, dare I say, more intensive. But this track is incredibly fun to turn laps on if you have the chance to do it without people breathing down your neck.
Yeah, and you can just see how relaxed Emily's about it, because she's sitting there talking to her chat. She's even talking to our webcam here, which I assume is the same camera that she's using, although a lot of these streamers just use a different camera for their actual streams than they do for the pictures that we see on broadcast. But yeah, she seems completely and utterly relaxed. She continues to pull the gap. Is coming up to around about 5 seconds at this point. So she basically just needs to get it to the checkered flag, and that's going to be all rope. But here's a look back at Jimmy Broadbent trying to manhandle that car through the chicane. You can just see how much wheel work he's attempting to put in. And of course, you know, Jimmy, he does tend to run with quite high force feedback on that direct drive wheel. So you can just see how much he was having to wrestle with it. Continuing on though, down towards the slight right-hand kick in the road, down in towards the Mulsanne. And well, of course, I was just mentioning that that Jimmy was having to really fight the wheel coming through the chicane.
Oh yeah, definitely. The thing that's worth noting is that, you know, he's really got it clamped on to that rig. It's all clamped together really well, allowing him to run that massive amount of force back. He was talking earlier on about the fact that he was doing a training session. I think that training session was in 2 parts. One, to give him the chance of having an actual car. The other one, it's served him for what can be a very aggressive manner of driving around this race course, because if you're going from high speed to speed, the force feedback on those wheels will really kick in, and we've seen a couple of those already. We go from Broadbent over to Matt Malone then, running in P number 8, battling it out with Jardier, as the gap between the two of them, as they just work themselves now through Arnage, is running at about 0.2 of a second as they come underneath the Porsche sign then to enter Porsche Kerr's section of the racetrack. As the starts off with the little left-hand flicks. You can try and pull alongside into the first part of the Porsche Kerr's. You really wouldn't want to do it in a long endurance race. It can be a little bit too risky, but I'd say that Honzik right now just seems to be keeping it cool and calm. I've been having a look at him on webcam as well. It is weird for me to say looking at someone on webcam. I'm not going to lie to you, but I mean that cleanly, of course. And for Honzik, he just looks as though he's having a lot of fun. But don't forget, so many of these cars now have got damage after the incident we saw earlier on. And I'm not going to lie to you, I think they need to go to the Porsche Experience Centre to get that car kind of checked over after this race.
Go to the Porsche Experience Centre and get a fast repair. They are available in this race, though, so the option is available for them to come down towards pit lane to be able to get all of that damage fixed. But as we can see, both Jardier and Matt Malone on their webcams continuing on, well, not quite a battle at the moment for this position of P7, but it's certainly one that can turn into a lot more by the time the end of this race arrives. But I get the feeling that Matt Malone's just dropping off the back a little bit here through the more high speed, not so much the more high speed sections, but more the medium and low speed corners, not able to really hang on onto the back of Jardier. But of course, he is still close enough coming onto the Mulsanne for him to make all of that time back.
Yeah, indeed, as the gap will likely close. Just having a look at it right now, it's 0.6 per second as they start that journey down the Mulsanne between those two drivers. And Jardier does look as though they've all got the same setup, but it looks like the damage Dejardier's car isn't impacting him to the extent that basically that car becomes an anchor, is what I was trying to say. Because, of course, you do get damage to these cars. Damage on the front of it can make it really, really hard to defend positions. As we turn our attention away from that battle for just a moment, we go down our field a little bit. Actually, no, we're going to stay with it because just behind, you've got yourself Zizzaboris in that beautiful, by the way, white and black car. Really love the design on that one. But Zizzaboris is catching those turns. Just having a look at the lap times between them as well. Last time out, 7 sectors at this racetrack, by the way, in terms of timing and scoring. It was a time of 3:51.5 for Hydro last time by, a 3:52.8 for Matt Malone. So that's the reason why that's now a 3-car battle, Connery.
Yeah, okay, and Hydro is for sure closing in on all of this. Just using all of the slipstream off of Matt Malone, and he can just drive right by on the driver's right-hand side before he hits the brakes in towards the Mulsanne corner. So a very and very simple pass there for Hydro. You can see the damage on the front end of Matt's car just from that rear view cam on board with Hydro. You can see how the splitter is all torn up at the very front there. That's certainly not going to help the drag of the car, and it's certainly not going to help the balance coming through the downforce dependent corner as well. So that's what Matt Malone's been having to deal with, and of course there might be other hidden damage that we're not quite seeing, like wheel or suspension damage as well. Just
a couple of points. First one, I think, and I say this in the nicest way possible, Zizzaboris wins award for the most boring webcam backdrop of the season. Not going to lie to you, it is the plainest one of the season, but that is no disrespect as it goes a little wide there down at R9, but nothing major, as because of that he's now got Matt Malone right behind him. We did tell the drivers in the briefing not to do any bump drafting. This isn't a NASCAR race after all, but it seems like Matt Malone is absolutely desperate to get every last second of the toe possible. Zizzaboris, because of the fact that he's not got damage, this will actually help him over the next couple of laps to A, most likely put away from Matt Malone, and B, close up to the rear of Honzik and that number 12 car as well. Although we've only got 4 minutes 40 seconds to go, so 2 laps then to go on track, as I believe Emily Jones is already way past the start-finish line as we go on board with Maxime. And today, the Nordschleifer little graphic car is lit up in blue. I have got to say, I think it has been a different car at every race.
Yeah, I get the feeling that's been the case as well, and you can see that she's got the helmet on the top shelf as well. So absolutely fantastic to see. I like, you know, some people say it might be a little bit egotistical, but I like people flexing their awards in background and their racing memorabilia as well. So that's great stuff there from Maxime. She's currently down in 50, which is last place, which is probably not so great as far as the racing is concerned. But of course, she was involved in an earlier incident, and she's about 3 minutes off of Emery's race leading position at the moment. But there's Will Ford from Boosted Media. You can see how massive his setup is. He has the basically edgeless triple screen setup going on there, which is absolutely crazy.
Yes. And motion rig as well. So early on when you talk about G-forces, I mean, it's not the same as a race car. But a little bit of G-force implied there for Will Ford. I will say as well, Connery, I had the chance once to go to a full 360 degrees XYZ motion simulator. And driving in one of those does give you an absolute workout. And to be fair, we talked earlier on about this in terms of, you know, Jimmy Broadbent and his high force feedback settings, as Will Ford is just going to pull alongside, gain the muscle, and this is going to be down into the first of 2 chicanes at the Mulsanne. You probably know what it's called, but we're definitely not allowed to call it that corner name here. But we go back to our battle for third place. Jimmy Broadbent and 360. Gap between the two of them is a quarter of a second right now. And Sanchez, well, interestingly enough, and this is going to be interesting for the next lap and a half here, Connery, wasn't in the draft there, although I say that, they just changed positions. So Sanchez does go past. I was going to say, before they rudely interrupted my thought, that on this last lap, when do you try to overtake? Because that's going to be so much fun to work with.
Well, you can get a pass done into the first Mulsanne chicane, you get the pass done into the second Mulsanne chicane, you can also do it into Mulsanne corner itself, and of course you can get it done in terms of the run down toward Indianapolis as well. So there are a lot of opportunities and potentially a lot of changes for position in any of these battles that we'll be seeing into the last lap of things. But we will just wait and see, and we'll see that happen. Looks like we're going to get one more lap at the moment as Emery is heading her way through towards what I believe is the Porsche curves in just a couple of moments. So that basically confirms the one more lap to go mark here. We can see the cameras from Xavier Sanchez and Jimmy Broadbent in their particular battle. Jimmy having a good giggle about something. We're going to have to look back at the stream to see what that's going on. But of course, these drivers do have car-to-car radios as well, so you know they're going to sit in the same voice channel, and they can talk to each other. So that provides it some of its own entertainment as well.
Yeah, Honzek's probably saying, "Why did someone Punterino me?" As you probably saw from his T-shirt when we were looking at him earlier on. But this battle for third, fourth place, it will come down to the final lap. There is one more lap here to go at Circuit de la Sarthe in our sprint race. A 25-minute feature race is coming up pretty soon after that one as well. Emily Jones then coming past the start finish line. Barney is going to wave the white flag. One more lap to go in this race. And Emily Jones, could you imagine that as traffic at Le Mans in a 20-minute sprint race?
Yeah, Maxime had another little problem coming into the final couple of chicanes, so that's why she lost yet more time and now drops that one lap down. So that's the situation that has happened to her there. But yeah, it is kind of surprising that you get traffic at the end of a short sprint race. That track's so long, but we'll just have to continue on. The gap though between Heike and Jimmy has extended here. Heike putting in a fantastic amount of effort here in the dying moments of this race to be able to pull that gap. He's not quite broken all of the slipstream just yet. Jimmy's still about a second behind, which is about when these GTE cars start to run out of the if you're behind, that's when you start to not feel too much of the effects of the slipstream. But Jimmy's going to be well aware of that. He needs to just get these amazing runs now, try and maximize the exits of these corners and just to try and close that gap. Maybe the move into Indianapolis is still on if he's able to close in.
Yep, so about two-thirds will happen. In fact, now less than two-thirds will have to go for these drivers on board with Jimmy Broadbent in that double O car through the first of the chicanes then at Circuit de la Sarthe. And for Broadbent, he is, you're right, he's dropped back to second back, and we don't have, we have all the data actually, I'll take that one back, and it's been staying at about a second constantly down the Mulsanne. So unless Jimmy can do something absolutely amazing on the brake down into Mulsanne chicane part 2 and into Mulsanne corner, it looks as though that Sanchez might well get third place in this one.
Gap is down to 8 tenths. Well, was briefly down to 8 tenths now, back up to 9 tenths. So at this point, I don't know if Jimmy's doing just quite enough to be able to get a more healthy about the slipstream to be able to make this pass happen. This is only battle within a second out there on circuit, so that's what we're going to be focusing on until the end of this event. Down into the Mulsanne corner they come. Heike has just been nailing all of the exits to these corners and does so once again that time around. Gap 8 tenths of a second. Jimmy's trying to close in, but it might be a little bit too little too late.
And for Emily Jones, she is 5.7 seconds ahead of anyone else on track. And she has done an absolutely masterful race. And again, of course, what it does mean is she's going to have to come all the way through the field in our feature race, which will be 5 minutes long. So basically add a lap onto what you've seen here. So we're looking as though we're going to be doing 6 laps in our feature race. Coming up immediately after this one, just seeing for the final time whether or not Jimmy Broadbent can do anything into the Porsche curves. Gap has come down to 4 tenths of a second. I did say before, you can draft and get alongside into the Porsche curves, and then the last sequence of corners after that through Corvette down towards Ford. But I think Jimmy Broadbent is anywhere near close enough. Really would have needed to have been right in the rear spoiler of Sanchez coming into the Porsche curves in order to make that one work. So I think that one, unless it's going to be a lunge into the chicane, is done and dusted. Meanwhile, Emily Jones through at the Ford chicane then for the final time, and she is going to be your winner in the sprint race here at Circuit de la Sarthe. Emily Jones wins by a comfortable margin. A car off track, I believe. That was a Maxine just getting out of the way of that third place battle. Sanchez able to hold on there over Jimmy Broadbent. By the way, rounding out your podium was Borja Zazo in that number 56 car, who comes home in second place. Finally, this is going to be Matt Malone versus Cisaboris, as they'll come through the Ford chicane. Matt Malone will get that one done, and Hydro will finish in P number 9. Going to have a look at your final race results in a moment, but Connery, we learned a little bit then. Drafting works, but you can't drop off the pack.
You absolutely can't. You have to be in it to win it, as the famous saying goes. So if you keep yourself in contention in the draft, then potentially you might be able to get a pass done on the final lap. But Jimmy wasn't quite close enough on that final lap to get things done and go up into that podium spot. But here's the official, the unofficial race results from the heat race. Well, so Emily Jones wins from Borja Zazo there. That's the front row. That's exactly how they started as well. Xavier Sanchez in third place. Jimmy Broadbent comes home in fourth, with Tony Kanaan in fifth. Matthew Wacker otherwise known as Rye, in P6. Jardier in P7. Matt Malone P8. Julian Cisaboris, Hydro in P9. And Cyanide will round out the top 10.
Yep, indeed. And of course, we call them unofficial results because of the fact that Race Control will look at them after the event is over. The incident with Dan Suzuki, well, we'll have to have a look at that one, shall we say, after the race, because it did cause a secondary and a tertiary incident. And what Race Control will normally be looking is, did everyone follow procedures? Did they hold their brakes? Did they try not to come back on track quickly, etc., ad nauseum? But we are going to be about 4 minutes away from our second race of the day, which of course is going to be 25 minutes long. But before you go to do all that, what you can do right now is go to overtake.gg/PESC vote. That is overtake.gg/PESC VOTE right now, and you can vote for the best overtake of the year from the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. 10 options to choose from. You've got one from Interlagos, which was Beneke versus De Jong. You had one from Barcelona with Sebastian Job. In fact, Sebastian Job is featured 4 times on this list. Rogers is featured 3 times on this list. Then you got Beneke, you got Josh Thompson, and you got Charlie Collins. That's the easier way of explaining that.
Well, it's, there's a whole wealth of choices to go with there on that Overtake GG poll. So, both your championship contenders are there. You've got Max Bernecker as well, who's always been a top contender. Charlie Collins is the rookie as well, getting himself nominated for Overtake of the Year. If you had to ask me, then it'd be very, very difficult. We saw how much of a specialist Sebastian Job is at Overtakes. I think the most memorable one, at least of that list, was at Imola when he was in and amongst the thick of things at race number 3. So if I had to pick one from that list, it'll probably be that one. But, any of those would be worthy of the title, I think.
Yeah, indeed. And after you've been to overtake.gg/PESC, go over to iRacing.com/Supercup for more information on schedule standings and how to become a driver, maybe yourself, in the series as well. And you can join iRacing right now. Check out the iRacing website to find out how you can start your iRacing career. And of course, there are special offers right now on the iRacing website for new members. Well, that's our sponsor each done for at least the next 25 minutes there, Conway. Happy days. Let's think about what's going to happen in race number 2, because we saw a lot of drafting. We saw a lot of defending. However, that race was really broken up between that incident with Zazo and Dan Suzuki.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting one, Will. I think at this track, more than a lot of the others, it'll be much more of an opportunity for those drivers caught on the bad end of the reverse grid. So, for example, Emery, Zazo, Heike, those drivers will have a bit of a better opportunity this time to try and claw their way through the field compared to other races, just due to how easy you can get pretty simple passes done here coming down the Mulsanne. There's no way that you're going to be really held up for an extended period of time. So I would still rate those drivers that finished in the top couple positions for the sprint race. They still have a decent chance to have the same happen in the feature race here today as well.
So let's actually have a look at this beautiful racetrack, as I say, in northwest of France, in the countryside, circuit de 24 Heure de Mans. As well, the first part of the racetrack really is one of the few parts which is a proper racetrack. Everything else really is public roads. And of course, what they do is they open the roads up at night to allow people to go, and then they close them again. And that's the reason why a practice for the big 24-hour race basically cannot run late under any circumstances. 51 meters is the elevation here from the start-finish line. The track length is 13.6 kilometers long. It is the second longest track on iRacing after the one that we've just been to. Only 38 turns compared to the Nordschleife. It has, though, undergone many modifications since it opened in 1923. The most, well, famous of those is, of course, adding in the 2 chicanes down the Mulsanne. And I remember back at the end of the Group C days, the people just trying to go faster and faster and faster down there. And really, actually, Connery, it's called the Le Mans rule, what they use in terms of FIA grade A circuits, because of the fact you can't have a straight longer than 1.5 kilometers. Realistically, it is the rule they invented to slow down this racetrack without them having to completely redesign it.
Of course, but you have seen certain track designers try and get around that rule by putting in a slight turn just before the straight to try and extend the full throttle section out of the real final corner out onto the straight. So it's you know, it's just like the teams try to do in certain racing series. The track designers seem to try and get around things as well. But yeah, absolutely, you know, such a historic circuit for such a good reason as well. You know, everyone knows this one. But here we go. Well, this is the starting grid for the feature race.
Indeed, and don't forget, it is an inverse grid. So Maxime MXM, she'll be starting on the front row of the grid alongside Gamer Muscle. James West. Row number 2 will be Will Ford, Boosted Media. Dan Suzuki, after, of course, that incident he had, lap 2 of race number 1. Pierre-Olivier Valette and Amir Fakir will be on row number 3. Row number 4, Julian Tizorus and Matt Malone. Row 5, Jaroslav Honzik and Mattia Vaca. Tony Kanan and Jimmy Broadbent in row number 6. Row 7, Xavier Sanchez and Borja Zarzo. And right at the rear of the field, Emily Jones. I will say one thing about that picture of Emily Jones that I noticed. It looks as though her highlights have changed from green to something else.
Yeah, it does seem to be the case there, but as these drivers get themselves set behind that Porsche, of course, the Porsche 911 Cup car that currently leads this field around. Of course, sans all of the spoilers and such in that pace car compared to the actual 911 GT3 Cup car that we'll be returning to, of course, at Monza, which I certainly can't wait for. But we're going to get this final round of the RSR section underway in just a couple of moments' time.
Indeed, as the cars have just got themselves a couple of corners left to go. And looking, I always laugh when I see the L plates on the rear of Gamer Muscle's car. I think it's absolutely hilarious. And these drivers, 15 of them on track. And of course, the last round of the championship, 2 weeks' time at Monza. It will be really sad to see this series end. I'm not going to lie to you. It's been so much fun seeing and talking to these influencers over the course of the season. But we've got 25 minutes worth of racing to go. And another event at Monza before we start getting all sentimental. Looking then at our wonderful 360 onboard camera down into the chicane. You don't get the fly past twice in one afternoon. You will actually when the Porsche series starts later on. But hey, through the final part of the chicane, green flag in the air, Barney's waving enthusiastic. We are running for 25 minutes as there we are. We do get a flyover as in towards the Dunlop curve they come then for the first time, and already Suzuki 2-for-1 special up to the front of your field.
Gamer Muscle just pulled well out of the way. I'm not exactly sure what's going on. No, there's more action, more drama going on out there on circuit. Big moment there coming into the Dunlop curves for the first time. Multiple drivers tagged around. There's too many to list, but I'm just trying to find exactly who was the instigator of that. It looks like it was Boosted Media down the inside of Cyanide. No, there's no contact actually. Cyanide lost it all on his own and just caused that whole carnage behind him.
Yeah, so number 13 car, Cyanide, down now into 12th place. As we see a couple of slow cars down the exit of Tetra Rouge. Slowdown penalty lap number 1. We talked about that one last time out, about how bad that can be for you. But what this has done is it's made the mid-pack really bunch together, but it's given Dan Suzuki a 3-second advantage at the front of the field. Matt Malone second, side by side with Boosted Media as they go through the chicanes here down the mall sign. And Boosted Media has the advantage for the moment. However, Matt Malone will get a second bite of the cherry as they come through. We're going to get ourselves a Vodafone Replay on your screen in just a moment's time. As here we go then, having a look at the Vodafone Replay down in towards the Dunlop curve for the first time. And, well, that looks more than anything else. That was a brake BS issue, Connery. That was just snatching a brake into Dunlop all by himself. But Emily Jones, who has been so lucky this season in getting the right way when there's been an incident, was involved in that incident there, and she's all the way down in P14.
We'll have to see how that mathematically affects the championship situation as well, because Dan Suzuki, Emily's closest challenger, currently leads this race and is scoring a whole bunch of points in terms of the points difference between the two of them here at the moment. So if he's able to convert that and Emily doesn't improve much from where she is right now, then that could mean that Dan Suzuki keeps himself in with a good shot at the All-Star Series Championship coming in towards Monza. So that's how the complexion in terms of that particular championship has changed around. You can see this little pack of cars heading their way through right now. That's Matt Malone, Boosted Media, Tony Kanaan, all in that 3-car pack, all quite close together, but of course not close enough to be able to make any moves just yet, although Kanaan does get very, very close to the back of Will, and now Will's been forced out very wide coming through Indianapolis, and that's Kanaan through.
Yeah, so TK in that number 14 car is up into 3rd place. Of course, got his huge Brazilian contingent, and also fans of him, of course, from car watching him on social media. We're on board with Boosted Media. Will Ford right now in 4th place with that wonderful motion rig. And actually, he was the second person that told me about the wonderful things that you can do between the bezels of the monitors to make it really enclosed, and you don't have to deal with that horrible little gap between your monitors in a setup like that after a certain person called Linus Sebastian. But Will Ford, absolutely beautiful setup. I will say, if there was a vote for best rig of the year, Will Ford would probably win it.
Yeah, I think so for sure, at least from what we've seen. Of course, we can't, in the actual Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, usually the camera's on the drivers' faces rather than on their rigs, so we can't quite see exactly what the professional sim drivers are using to compete here.
There is a reason for that. There is a reason for that, and that's because they're running a fixed setup here. So there's not got any sneaky business, any wonders of the setup that they can, accidentally give away to their competitors. So they can be more open in this series compared to the pro guys later on.
Yeah, that could be one of the reasons for it, but I'm not sure what the quality on a video feed like that would be to be able to try and sneak out some a little bit of setup details. But looking a little bit further back, of course, you've got this little gaggle of cars here. Involved in Boosted Media, Depiello, or Depilio. I've been criticised on my pronunciation of that name throughout this this particular season. I'm not sure whether it's been fixed now, but you can see Hydro further back in that pack as well. So it seems like these positions for P4 and back are all just closing up at the moment. Jimmy's closing in and Rye as well, so it's potential to cause one big mega train here as Depiello decides to move on Will Ford.
Side by side, we've always had the joke about the orange cone at Circuit de la South. I'm not going to go down that road today. However, that was a nice little pass. But is that going to be a slowdown penalty? Or is that just moving to left-hand side? That's just moving to left-hand side of the racetrack. The slowdown penalty here, it can really hurt you. It is a slowdown penalty. And there is a way of doing it. And it's anyone that's run the Daytona 24 Hours on iRacing will know that you don't just slow down. You just want to ease about 85% throttle. I just think, I'm not going to lie to you, that seems to be a really strict penalty because that's 4 places lost in about 7 seconds.
Yeah, it is. They are particularly stringent here at the circuit of the South with regards to the slowdown penalties. And of course, if you have to pull out a line and lift out the throttle a little bit down the Mulsanne, that's just going to mean the freight train comes through on you. Here's Zazo trying to make a move on Hydro, though, down towards the inside at the Mulsanne. It gets a little bit close between the two of those guys, but Zazo down the inside and gets to the exit of the corner and is clear. So one position going the way of Zazo. He's up 9 on the day.
He is. Porsche Zazo is on the move here. Emily Jones did definitely get some damage. She's 106 back from Dan Suzuki right now. And again, she's just running for points and the championship. But also, one thing I will say, I've been incredibly impressed about these drivers that we've not really seen any, what we'd like to call in the industry, rage quitting. These drivers will continue all the way through. And yes, they do that because they've got a community that are watching them, but they very easily just pull up at the side of the racetrack and talk to their viewers, etc. Porsche Zazo on the rear of Will Ford as they come into the Porsche curve section of the racetrack again. Currently P5 for Porsche Zazo. I wonder what he's going to turn up wearing at Monza. That is the one thing I'm looking forward to more than anything else. Would it be a tux? Would it be the Rebel pose, or would it be something in between?
We'll just have to wait and see as they go door to door through Porsche curves. It's so tricky to do that here. It slows you up a whole bunch as well. So those 3rd, 4th, 5th parties that are trying to close in on you are just going to a whole bunch of time, especially if you're not able to complete the pass, like is what just happened in this exact situation. Zazo will try and get the run coming out the corner here, try and find a line into the final couple of corners of the lap, but he will be denied at every single opportunity, and now it's a bit of a train behind him, let me tell you. I see it on my own view, there's multiple cars involved in this. Yeah, there are. This is a great little scrap going on all the way from P4 down to P9 on track. It's got Will Ford, Porsche Zazo, Sanchez, and look at this already. 6 cars all in one shot into the Dunlop curve. Sanchez is involved, Cesabura is involved, Jimmy Broadbent and Villette all nose to tail, close enough to nose to tail as I now come through the curves, entering Tertre Rouge in a moment's time. I want to see, is there going to be a driver that can methodically pick their way through this? Because as soon as you get into a past 6 cars, it becomes harder to overtake. You've really got to be nailing 10th after 10th after 10th. Because the draft is basically affecting everyone down the track. Yeah, it is, and let's see how the drivers negotiate this situation then, because we haven't had, apart from the very, very starts of the race, these big long trains. So we'll see how the drivers position themselves on the Mulsanne here. You can see that Zazo's going for the move on Bustapedia. You can see that Broadbent is going on for the move on Hydro as well. This is the point of view from Depiello as he's watching all of this go on ahead of him. Hydro pushes out wide. He loses a lot of time, probably has a slowdown penalty as well. And now this might be the chance for Depiello to make some moves as well as he sits in the slipstream of Jimmy.
Yeah, as we stay on board with the number 64 car to the left-hand side. That'll be the inside line into the next chicane. Over Jimmy Broadbent in the 00 car. And they stay side by side, entering the second chicane. Of course, it seems with the second chicane that was giving Jimmy a bit more of an issue early on when we saw him really gnawing away at the reel. But that is a place then gained for that number 64 car. Hydro is one that's lost out the most this time around on track. The number 15 car down into 9th place. We stay on board. A very sleek little headset there for Depiello as he'll now come into Mulsanne corner. Actually not running a lot of force feedback on that car. You can really tell, Connery, when we have these kind of side-on, how much force feedback these drivers are running. And for Villette, he's basically not running as much as we've seen, well, Will Ford and Jimmy Broadbent in particular.
I can't quite tell exactly what kind of wheel that is. I don't know if it's an actual, just a GT wheel on a direct drive base or something like that, but might not be as high as what some of the other drivers are having to deal with right now. Jimmy, though, able to try and defend and try and hold on. There's a bit of tyre going on ahead, and it's a bit of confusion as well coming off the corner. Depiello going side by side with Boosted Media. Jimmy trying to find the line through. He's cracked open the inside of Depiello, but he doesn't get any speed off the corner.
Yeah, so that one started with Sanchez locking up, by the looks of it, into Indianapolis. So it all started around the 23 car, and then everyone else was trying to A, avoid an incident, B, try to find some point on the racetrack to become a little bit opportunistic, as we see again the number 4 car, Boosted Media and Valette Diepolo in the number 64 car, trying to go side by side into the Porsche curves, not able to do so. And because they went side by side there, they have lost a little bit of time. 1.2 back they are right now from P5 and Sanchez. So Heike 360 is, and they're still going at it. Can't even finish a point here because they stay going side by side, and that is going to be Valette ahead. And it looks so that Will Ford just let both of the, Valette and Broadbent pass on the entrance into the Porsche chicane.
Looks like Will Ford from Boosted Media had a slowdown penalty that he had to serve, and you can see that he's still trying to serve it coming across the grid spots there, and Hydro might potentially be able to get his way through and pick up that position as well. So that's not ideal there from Boosted Media. Let's have a look further forward though, because the battle between Borja Zazo and Heike is now on, as Heike tries to hold on, and looks like he's been able to do so for the moment, as Zazo, it's been a mega charge for Zazo through the field so far, and now has yet another competitor to try and get past. Then Kanan's probably a little bit too far down the road to be able to catch by the end of the race. So this might be the limit here for Zazo. P4 on the cards for sure.
And we're hearing from our guys working behind the scenes that Borja Zazo went straight on down at Dunlop. And that's the reason why he lost that place. So Borja Zazo down into P number 5 after losing that position then to Sanchez. Ironically, that little slowdown for Borja Zazo has brought a lot of that battle back down together. We go a little bit further up in your field. We're looking at Matt Malone versus Tony Kanaan, and the gap between these two drivers is about half a second. You can see in the background P4 through P9 on track. So they're still on the same straightaway. That's, well, a bit of a myth here at Le Mans because the straights are so long. But Matt Malone, he has had a good race, running in second place in that 83 car. Tony Kanaan, though, we know can do unconventional overtaking opportunities. He's one of those drivers I would absolutely love to see at Le Mans. Scott Dixon being another one from the IndyCar side of things I'd love to see actually at some point running a 24-hour race here at Circuit de la Sarthe. Tony Kanaan actually got a very good run out of Mulsanne Corner. This could give him a run into Indianapolis. He's lost himself about a tenth of a second though. It's a battle for 4th place down at the bottom of your screen, the battle for P number 2 along at the top of your screen. Kanaan's closing again and not quite able to do anything into Indianapolis. Does peek the nose to the right hand side. It would be, of course, Axe if he was trying to make a pass and get one done into Indianapolis. But we've also got at the rear of the shot of your lower screen, we've even got P number 8 and 9 battling out, although not into Indianapolis, as that is going to be Valette trying to make a move then over Borja Zazo, not able to do so.
Jimmy had a little look in the back of that train as well. Oh, what's happened to Hydro? Looks like he had a bit of a spin and a bit of an incident there as the Frenchman gets back going out there on circuit. He's down in P9 at the moment and continue to have dropped back off of that train that's going on right now. So not exactly ideal there for Hydro, and a little bit of no man's land right now in fact as well. No one really close ahead, no one really close behind either. So it's going to be a pretty lonely race for the rest of it for Hydro. But we're still shaping up for a potential tastic finish, both for that P2 will and of course P4 and back as well.
Yep, and I feel like playing the dead and alive then to Mrs. Zabura. She's spin me right round, baby. But he's pointing back in the right direction. That is the most important part. It is worth noting that your P5 through 7 battle now just down to 3 cars. Of course, it was always going to be 3 cars, P5 through 7, but you know what I mean. Earlier on, it's P4 through P number 9. It now is down to a 3-horse race down there. It's field getting spread out with a little bit of slowdown penalties, a couple of incidents. Let's get the Vodafone replay up, shall we then, and have a look and see what happened to Cesar Boris as the Vodafone replay were on board. And this is Cesar Boris coming into, oh my word, You don't often see people get that loose into Indianapolis. Normally they're able to hold it through there because in most cars, Connery, it's a gentle lift at most. And the bigger issue is actually when you slow down for the left-hander, which is Indianapolis itself.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a weird one. Of course, you know, these cars can be a little bit unstable on the brakes, considering these cars do not have any ABS like the like for example GT3 cars and such. So it's the GTE category, so they don't have those sorts of assists on board to be able to help out these drivers. So you can be prone to a little bit of rear locking. At least that might have been one of the influencing factors. We saw it in an instant a little bit earlier on as well. Battle for P2 on though. You can see right at the very top of the double box that we have up right now, going very, very close, almost trading paint on the way down the Mulsanne.
That is closer, and Matt Malone just holding on to position, but gets loose, and that's going to give Tony Kanaan all the move he needs to get second place, and that was loose there by Matt Malone on the exit of the second chicane here down at the Mulsanne, and that was all Tony Kanaan needed in order to get himself clear. However, in the same way that Zazo Sanchez, if they were to settle down between the two of them, they wouldn't really have anyone else to battle with. Tony Kanaan is 6.2 behind Dan Suzuki. You can see Suzuki right at the back of that shot there on the exit of the the slow right-hander on the exit of the Mulsanne, which is Mulsanne corner. But for Tony Kanaan, he's got a 3/10 of a second advantage from Matt Malone. But Kanaan, I've got a feeling he just wants to keep it cool now and then really try and build up that gap from Porsche curves onward. And Matt Malone isn't quite close enough there to make the move into Indianapolis. Down a little bit on your grid, though. And this is the P4 through P7, 8 battle. P7 it is now. 4 drivers involved in this one. Jimmy Broadbent at the rear. Then you've got yourself Alette in 6th, Zazo in 5th, and Sanchez in 4th place. And we're on board with the 00 car of Jimmy Broadbent.
Yeah, so he has, well, the best view of everything in the house. Maybe not the best seat in this particular battle, but Jimmy will be hoping that he's able to improve at least a couple positions before the checkered flag here. Of course, we're just coming up, well, we're just below 6.5 minutes left to go here in this one. Of course, this race being 5 minutes longer than we had in the sprint race just a race ago. So a little bit more time for these drivers to be able to set themselves up for any passes a little bit later on, but it's still not too much time in the grand scheme of things, as Jimmy continuing to just haul that wheel around the Porsche curves and now coming towards those final couple of corners of the lap. He's lost a little bit of time here to the 3 cars ahead of him, but still well within drafting distance, so therefore he's definitely not out of this particular battle. In fact, if he's able to get a very, very tidy final couple of spins there. Oh, someone's got a slowdown penalty. That's Heike.
Yep. Sanchez losing 1, losing 2 places. Jimmy Broadbent having to go deep down the inside there into Dunlop. I'm not going to lie to you. I think Sanchez should have just made sure that the line was available to Jimmy and not block it off the way he did. Because actually now these two have lost a bit of time to Valette and Zazo, although a bit of that was Broadbent's doing. He overshot himself into Dunlop curve there. We were looking on board, but it's clear he overshot himself into Dunlop curve, and that is the reason why they lost about half a second to Valette and Zazo.
Yeah, but it's all going to close up once again. That's just the nature of the racing here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. It doesn't matter, as long as you stay within around about a second of the cars ahead of you, then it's all groovy. You're still involved in the fight, so try not to lose more time than that if you're going to have a bit of a battle or if you have a bit of a mistake. Depiello and Zazo, by the way, at the very front of this train are bump drafting a little bit, and Depiello now looking to the inside for Mulsanne, but he's not Mulsanne, but the Mulsanne chicane, but he's not going to be able to squeeze his way through just yet. So it's a game of chess at well over 250 kilometers an hour here down the Mulsanne. You had to pick your place to try and get past, and well, these cars in particular, they reached just about over 300 kilometers an hour coming towards the end of the straights here. So it's well, if you're going to have a crash, have an impact, it's going to be a pretty brutal one at those speeds.
I promise that I'm not going to be driving that fast when we have our little road trip on down the line. Of course, we're not going to be in a Porsche, unfortunately, but even then, Jimmy, this is that whole thing you were talking about earlier on. The fact that, you know, he is tired, he is aching. You can see him resting his right arm, resting his left hand, resting his left foot. As we're now looking at Borja Zarzo, and Valette is going to look alongside into Mulsanne. No, not going to happen. Borja Zarzo then able to stay where he is in position. So now work themselves down towards Indianapolis once again. And they're going to have basically one lap go after this one. Dan Suzuki is currently about 20 seconds, 17.5 seconds ahead of this lot. So they are going to definitely get one more lap in, Connery, after this one. So the prophecy was correct. 6 laps here for the feature racers. That's closer. Zarzo going to lose position as Let's going to go round the outside into Indy. Well, the corner before Indy.
Yeah, and completing it on the inside for the Indianapolis corner itself. But, oh, my word, big slide from Zarzo. He's able to hold it, though. It stacked up everyone behind. You can see on the roof cam, Timmy trying to work his way through. And you see Sanchez going out into the grass there to try and get by. We get 3 wide here on the way down in towards Porsche Kivs. Who's going to back out, Will?
None of them. For the time being. And that's what happens when no one backs out. They all collide together. Broadbent into the barrier. Zarzo into the barrier. One driver was able to escape there. And, well, 3 wide into the Porsche curves. That is not what you're going to see. We might get a Vodafone replay of that one later on. But let's go and have a look back at the battle that we have got going on right now. And this is mighty close. They enter and exit the Ford chicane, coming past the start-finish line. And let's have a look then. Tony Kanaan is currently about 4 toes per second back. Remember, of course, Connery, that Kanaan's re-lost that place, Malone. Kanaan was ahead the last time we were looking at this lot.
Yep, he was, but now falls in behind. Is that the better place to be on the start of the final lap, though? He's going to have a look. Coming into the first sector here, they're going to go side by side through the sweeping S's, and that's Kanaan through. But Malone kind of really helped that. He lifted out the throttle, just said, okay, I'll let you go. I can get you back now coming down these long straights. So we momentarily step aside from looking at this battle to bring you the Vodafone replay as we've got ourselves this 3-car incident. We're looking on board with Haiku 360. This is then what happened as the slowdown really bunched everyone together. The slowdown was for Borja Zarzo. Actually, it wasn't a slowdown. He just got himself mighty losing the exit of the corner and slowed himself down. Then we went to 3 wide, and you can see they're already wheel banging side to side as they came in towards the Porsche curves. And then there's a slight touch from the 23 car. That moved Broadbent to the left. And from there, well, that's a lot of damaged race cars, is all I can say about that. And it's also worth noting, Tony Kanaan, whilst we're on the Vodafone replay, Connery back up to P2. Right, this is the situation though for Matt Malone. He can close up into the next section of the circuit, into the second Mulsanne chicane. He can continue to close up into Mulsanne corner. He can maybe even make the move at Indianapolis, and then there might be a move back at the Porsche curve. So this is still a very, very much undecided between the two of them. Kanaan is trying to stretch the gap, as you know. But as much as he tries, though, the laws of physics will prevail, and that car of Matt Malone on the straight will pull itself back into contention.
We've only got a handful of corners left to go. Dan Suzuki has been absolutely dominant here. Well, that was partially because of the fact that there was an incident down at the Dunlop curb, lap number 1. But that didn't impact Dan Suzuki, and he has driven an absolutely faultless race all the way through this feature event of 6 laps. And of course, by doing so, he will be getting himself some prize money to give out to his community as well. 400 iRacing credits for that one. Between Kanaan and Matt Malone, a bit of a bump as they come down into Indianapolis corner, but Kanaan able to hold on to the rear of that car and is now going to be coming into Arnage for the final time. A little bit of a lock up there for TK in that number 14 car. Matt Malone is going to have to go aggressive if he wants that second place back. They're now coming to Porsche curves for the final time. Malone, I said this earlier, you want to be literally on the rear spoiler, the car ahead coming into Porsche, but look at that. Malone dancing to the left, Malone dancing to the right. He's not able to get anywhere then. Of course, TK is a driver that absolutely knows how to defend a position. He's done so, of course, winning the Indianapolis 500 in the past. But Matt Malone saying, you know what, don't care about that. I want P number 2 in this race. We'd step aside for a moment to go to Dan Suzuki coming through the full chicane for the final time. And Dan Suzuki is going to be your winner here of your feature race in the Tag Heuer All-Stars event. And then we've got ourselves P2, TK able to stretch out a lead at the end. Tony Kanaan second, Matt Malone in third, and then you've got yourself Valette coming home in fourth place, and, well, Sanchez, Hokey 360, rounds out your top 5. Very entertaining in parts. You've still got, by the way, battle going on. Boosted Media, we can see there, alongside of Hydra, as they come down into the forward chicane. They almost came together on the exit of Corvette, and now they've got a little bit of a breathing room there as they'll come down towards the start-finish line. And I think it is, was that a slowdown at the very end? No, the finish line. We know what we're talking about. Connery, it was a really exciting race. Parts of the last lap a little bit anticlimactic, but I tell you what, Matt Malone really did put the pressure on TK.
Hydro just got ahead of Boosted Media by not a lot of time there. A couple of hundredths of a second at the line. So great little battle there towards the checkered flag. But of course, you know, everything is starting to wrap up now. We got to wait for those final couple of runners to head their way across the finish line before we can show you the results of the penultimate feature race of the season here. Well, again, it seems like these events just deliver every single time we do them.
They do, as there are your results up on your screen. Dan Suzuki, well, 9.5 seconds there over Tony Kanaan, gets himself some prize money for his community for winning the race. By the way, Tony Kanaan and Matt Malone do as well. Tony Kanaan in second place, Matt Malone in third. Fourth place, Pierre-Olivier Valette, and then fifth is Xavier Sanchez. Julian Cizaboris in P number 6, Will Ford in 7th, Mattia Vaca in 8th, Emily Jones in 9th, and Amir Thacker will round out your top 10. Emily, of course, one of those many drivers involved in the incident down at Dunlop on lap number 1. Jaroslav Honzik in 11th place, Jimmy Broadbent 12th. Rest of those results up on your screen as we've got a little bit of a nice little formation cool-down lap going on then with some of these drivers, of course, as is tradition at Circuit de la Sarthe. Well, as we are getting ourselves towards the end of this coverage, we'd like to say hello and welcome to the Boza post-race show then from Circuit de la Sarthe. And Connery, it has been entertaining once again. The saddest part about this part of the broadcast is that we've got to say goodbye to the RSR machine because for the last round of the championship at Monza, as was the fan vote, we are going back to the 911 Cup car.
Yeah, democracy has decided and has demanded that we go back to the 911 GT3 Cup car, and I think, at least as a personal opinion, it's the most the driver's car of the selection of Porsches that we have on the iRacing service. It's you know, no assists. And it's very much a beast to try and handle through the corners. You know, that's why it's considered the top level World Championship level car here on iRacing, and it promotes some brilliant racing as well, like we saw in the first 3 rounds of this very All-Stars Championship. So we're going to go back to that for a race at Monza, which is, again, it's going to be incredible and so close as well for many of the same reasons that we saw here today with the slipstream.
A couple of these drivers have not run in the All-Stars event in the Cup car. Tony Kanaan, Porsche Zaze, who of course were fantastic here today. So it'll be really interesting to see how they adapt to the Cup car in 2 weeks' time at Monza. And of course, we go back to a standing starts as well, because it's only the RSR that we've been having rolling starts in, both Cayman and the Cup car. They had standing starts earlier on the season, and we're going back to that, which means that run down into the first chicane at Monza is going to be even more entertaining.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and well, at least in my experience, though, Will, it's never usually the first chicane that causes major problems at the more top level of competition. It's the second chicane, the Della Roja, where the issues start happening, because people tend to be a little bit more careful through the first chicane at Monza, because it's just known to have some congestion-related incidents coming into there. But everyone just lets their guard down when it comes to the Della Roja, as we'll get a couple of replays after this race at Le Mans.
Yeah, Vodafone Replay then. This is what happened with Boris. This is at the very end of the race. And I'm wondering if it's a slowdown there. It was a wiggle at the very least by Will Ford, but Boris was able to get ahead by the absolute smallest of margins. I'm literally pulling up my timing screen while it's gone, so I can't tell you that one, unfortunately. But it was the smallest of margins, and it looked as though Will Ford just a little bit too aggressive there over the final part of the curb at the Ford chicane, which actually ties us in nicely to Monza, because curbs and curb usage is absolutely everything, especially down the first two chicanes, the Variante del Rettifilo and the Variante della Roja.
Yeah, it is. So it's going to be a little bit of a different complexion when we get there. But of course, you know, given that we're in the Bose post-race show now, of course, Will, you're standing by with our race winner of the feature race here to start off this Bose post-race show. It's Dan Suzuki. Yeah,
we'd like to welcome you to the Bose post-race show here on iRacing across social media and Porsche social media as well. And we'd like to say hello to your race winner, Dan Suzuki. Well, Dan, that was almost a little bit too easy for you in the feature race because you had no one to battle with.
Yeah, kind of the second race. I don't know. I think there was a jump start ahead and then a little crash in the first chicane. And since then, I had a gap of like 3 seconds and just had to manage the gap. Luckily, Tony and Matt were fighting hard. I guess their race was kind of exciting to watch, and I just could manage my pace. I tried to get the quickest lap in the second race, but I don't know if I managed to do that.
Let's go back to the first race, which, of course, set you up a little bit for the feature, because you had a moment with Porsche there. Talk us through it from your perspective.
Yeah, I think we just went too wide to the corner. Maybe he was a bit too quick, overshot the corner a bit, but it's just, you know, first lap, it's racing. I cannot be mad for that. I always appreciate a good hard battle. Not a lucky outcome for me, but it is what it is. Still had a lot of fun. Yeah, I tried to get the quickest lap in the first race as well. So
you have been campaigning for the Cup car to return in this series. I mean, I could tell the viewers about just how many messages you've been posting on our private server. You've got it back from Monza, the last race of the championship. It is back. Are you going to end the season with a bang and take yourself back-to-back victories?
2 wins, of course. What else? Now, we're looking forward to that Cup car. Sorry?
You've got Emily Jones to battle with, though. And, of course, you two in the Cup car. I think that's the closest you were all season.
Emily will be hard to beat. I don't know if Dave will be in there for the last race. He was super strong in the very first race we had. I think Dave had a good pace there, and But I'm really looking forward to being back to the Cup car. I love that car. It's such a pleasure to drive.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Dan Suzuki, winner. Oh, before we go, what are you going to do with the prize money for your community? Have you got a competition event in mind?
To be honest, not yet. I will have to think about it and then come up with something for the final race.
Well, check him out on social media. We'll check him out then for social media. Dan Suzuki, the winner of your feature race here at Circuit de la Sarthe. And Connery, that is a very happy Dan Suzuki, and he's doubly happy because he's got the fact that he's got his favorite Cup car coming back in 2 weeks' time at Monza.
Yeah, so, you know, maybe that might be a little bit of an advantage going Dan's way coming into that final round. But, of course, we can have a little look at how the points stand here afterwards. And, of course, well, it wasn't actually enough for Dan in that last race to be able to get within the mathematical margin to try and surmount the leads that Emily Jones had surpassed there. So, Emily Jones has mathematically done it. So, but of course we can't officially crown her champion until the end of that round at Monza. But fantastic season.
Yeah, risk permitting, Matt Javette will be in Hockenheim in 2 weeks' time, and he will be doing all of the formalities for both the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports All-Star Series and the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. The point standings are up on your screen. Worth noting, by the way, P3, 4, 5, technically a little bit closer. I'd say P4 and 5 between Sanchez and Valette. We've seen them battling here today. That will be fascinating to watch at Monza as well. But yeah, Emily Jones, despite the fact that she had a miserable race number 2, always comes down to consistency over the course of the season. Consistency in a series like this, a series like the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, is always the big thing. But this has been the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports All-Stars race. We have got ourselves coming up next the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup by iRacing. Don't forget, you can visit iRacing.com now. If you are a new member to iRacing, check out the special offers. You can join iRacing right now. In the meanwhile, for myself, Will Benson, and Connery Maddock, we'll see you on the other side of this.
The great Jackie Stewart coined the phrase "the green hell."
It's going to be incredible to watch.
The revs rise here at the Nürburgring, and it is a good start from Josh Rogers. Bad start from Dave Warren. There's contact. Oh, there's multiple cars involved. That's Kevin Ellis Jr. He's out of this race already. Josh Rogers trying to break the draft here down the Dottinger Hut.
This is going to be tight.
It's Mitchell de Jong getting the double draft. Josh Rogers goes defensive, going 3 wide underneath the Bilstein Bridge, are we? And Sebastian Job, he's delighted with that. Away they go for the feature race here. Oh, Sebastian Job, engine.
Rare to see an iRacing an engine go, but he's done.
That's huge implications for the championship here.
Man, oh man, I gotta say, Thiago Pinto, race of the season for him so far.
See that queue of cars snaking down. And Josh Rogers could end up in the lead here.
I think he does. He did the same thing that Sebastian Job did. He gets the inside.
Charlie Collins, he's out. He's having to pull it over.
That's unbelievable.
He is a man who's desperate for a win. One of your rookies this season, Diogo Pinto. Look at the speed. Here comes Pinto. He's trying to get second place. Incredible. The door-to-door, mirror-to-mirror in towards Tiergarten. Will it be tears at Tiergarten? The answer is no, because Pinto squeezes ahead. But at the front then, it's going to be the Australian, Joshua Rogers. This has been a big week in terms of the championship. He knows that as they come across the line. Who's going to be second? It is Pinto who just gets second. Brilliant stuff to the end. The best result for the Portuguese driver. We're heading next to Le Mans. What a tremendous historic venue.
I think it'll get a little cheeky.
Of the best sim racers. $200,000 on the line. Who will rise to the challenge? Interlagos, Barcelona, Imola, Silverstone, Road Atlanta, Montreal, Spa, Nürburgring, Le Mans, Monza. This is racing for immortality. This is esports personified. This is the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup.
Green flag drops. Away we go from the start of this final feature race in the Porsche Esports Supercup. Brilliant launch.
40 of the best sim racers. $200,000 on the line.
Who will rise to the challenge? This is Racing for Immortality. This is esports personified. This is the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup.
Remaining here in this championship to decide who walks away with the prize money, and what a I can't think of a better venue to come to for the penultimate round of this championship than Circuit de la Sarthe here in northern France. Paul Smith here alongside a man who looks like he's done 10 rounds with Mike Tyson. Matt, how are you doing?
I've literally just sat down. I didn't even think I was going to make it. I went out for a little bike ride this morning. I'm a big mountain biker, and trail and a drop I've done a million times. I walked it and tried to recreate it. I can't figure out what caused me to be out of position, but yeah, fell, broke my wrist, and split my eyebrows, so here we are. But I wouldn't miss this for the world, Paul. That's why I'm back.
Yeah, absolutely.
I still have the hospital bracelet on, okay? I didn't even have time to take that off.
Well, I mean, it's great that your dedication to the cause is noted, that's for sure. But these drivers, let's take it to these drivers, because they've been dedicated throughout the entire season here. And, well, I mean, yes, Josh Rogers has got half a hand on that championship right now, but there is tremendous battling throughout the field. That battle for second place, particularly between Mitchell de Jong and Sebastian Job, has been tremendous all season, and that's going to go to the wire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Josh is, if he doesn't wrap it up today, he's pretty much got one hand on the trophy, as we said last time out, especially when Sebastian had the engine unfortunately blow for him with the shift. We talked about that at Nürburgring. And I think that, yeah, you're right. The battle further down is what we have to look to. And then we also have to look at the points battle for that 20th position and in around that, because we're getting to the end of the season. Top 20 requalify. Below that, you have to, sorry, I should say top 20 automatically qualify. The others have to requalify themselves, to make it more clear. So it's definitely a few battles to look at, absolutely. And there's another couple of names as well that have been there and thereabout, and one or two good performances could really wrap up the season well for them.
I mean, you called it last time. Diogo Pinto had the race of his life last time out. Whether he can continue that form into this round, we'll have to wait and see. But the drivers, I've been speaking to one or two of them. They've been saying that draft is going to be absolutely crucial around here. As actually, we'll have a look, first of all, at the championship standings. So there you can see Joshua Rogers, 127 points gap right now. There is a maximum of 170 points remaining in this championship. So it's going to be very difficult for him to lose it. But you never say never in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. But it's that battle, second and third. You look at how close those two are. Kevin Ellis Jr. as well, involved in that battle for fourth place with Dane Warren and Charlie Collins. There's been tremendous racing with those guys as well all the way through the season. And as you mentioned, Johan Hart, he's a bit out there on his own, down in 20th place. It's definitely going to be really interesting how everything pans out now.
Yeah, I mean, Sindre Setsaas, very fast driver. Martin Kronk, I mean, all these guys are so fast, and you're right, one performance can really secure a lot of positions. Look at Diago Pinto last time. I mean, had the podium, moved well up the order, and that's, again, that one performance I talk about to make it, you kind of pass that threshold of 20th. Talked to Josh Thompson a little bit this week as well, and he was very clear to me that the chicanes along the Mulsanne Straight that they obviously put in years ago to slow speeds down and make things safer are very prone to slowdown penalties. And he said a slowdown penalty here will absolutely ruin you, because the drafting and the speed of it, you cannot get back in sequence, and you'll just be freight trained by everyone. So he did say it's quite obvious when you're going to get one. You'll realize you're offline pretty quickly, but watch for those, because if anyone gets one, they're going to be a sitting duck.
And of course, on lap 1, they are absolutely brutal on lap 1, those slowdown penalties around here as well. That's, as you can see, the gap to 20th place. So Johan Hart is only 4 points clear. And I don't believe that, in fact, no, he isn't. He's not racing here today. So it's all going to, it's all been going against Johan. It's not been his season this season compared to previous years. But we're looking through that top 10. I mean, it's great to see Charlie Collins, Rookie of the Year by far. Zach Campbell has been up there as well. He's been tremendous this season. I've been really impressed by the American. And great to see Graham Carroll moving up the order compared to last season as well. He struggled a little bit last season. Alejandro Sanchez, I think he'll be really disappointed outside that top 10 compared to 3rd place last season.
Yeah, absolutely. We touched on it. I mean, from Brazil, the first feature race onward, he got caught in a lot of bad luck. Remember, it was Josh Rogers that clipped the inside of the curb in Brazil and took Alejandro out in the process, and he just never recovered. I think he's had maybe 2 podiums this year, and definitely when we spoke to him during those interviews, he was, he said, yeah, it's been difficult. I'm still driving well, but it's been a tough year, and I think there's a lot of that luck. So this is a cool place, though. I mean, it is technically on the French streets. That sign is as famous as any of the curves. Le Mans, talk me through this, Paul, because you've probably got more history over there with it than I do way over here.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've grown up watching the famous race that's raced here, but of course, this tremendous venue, you look at it, 13.6 kilometers in length. The Mulsanne Straight alone is the same length as the Sebring International Raceway. That just shows the size of this venue. I mean, we've gone from the longest track of the season last time out at Nürburgring. Now we're here at Le Mans. Completely different style of racing here. This is going to be pure slipstreaming action all the way through. The tricky corners, the corners that catch people out into Indianapolis. Arnage corner is a tricky corner. You don't expect it to be quite so slow. And the Porsche curves, these corners really do challenge those drivers out there.
Yeah, and you talk about brakes as well in the Porsche Cup car. Think about the speeds you're carrying down Mulsanne into the Mulsanne bend. I mean, you're hammering the brakes in there. There's no ABS in those cars. I think most people are aware, but for those of you who aren't, these things are tricky. You've got to get a good peak load and modulate. I struggle in iRacing with these cars considerably under braking. I think it's the most technical car there is, and it just goes to show how good these guys are. But in a race with a draft, a little bit of lack of aero on someone, they get in there, you're going to see some lockups today, I think.
Yeah, we are, and we're going to see opportunism, I think, is the word that we're going to use here. This is an opportunity for some drivers to really get the chance of using that draft. You're going to see a lot of side drafting and teaming up out there as well. Maybe some bump drafting. And they're going to be all working together. This is going to be as close to a NASCAR race as we'll get here on the Porsche Tagore Esports Supercup.
Well, and the other aspect of that is if we don't get a breakaway at the front, if there's not some sort of incident that kind of creates a gap, the guys at the front we know like to be cheeky and they like to play a little bit, and they don't necessarily want to be the one leading when there's a big draft. And that's all well and good for the front 3 or 4 guys who are willing to play that game. But if I'm 10th, 9th, back to 15th, and I'm in that freight train, I'm drafting everyone I can. So the front guys aren't going to be given a break because the back guys, if they're able to stay with it, are going to be all over them as well. So it's really gloves off the whole time.
Well, there we go. There's the sign. And of course, look at this, the Porsche curves. We are in qualifying at the moment, but yeah, the drivers are just getting themselves prepared before they do get their lap times in there. So those drivers just getting themselves prepared for this one. But what a tremendous venue it is, and of course a venue that you yourself can race here on iRacing as well. And if you've ever wondered about racing on iRacing and joining, well, make sure you head on over to iRacing.com for further details of how to start your iRacing career. And yeah, join the thousands upon thousands of people who race each and every day of the week. And you may even see a certain Yorkshireman commentator out there on track as well, being about 4 seconds a lap slower than these guys in the Porsche. But yeah, we're into qualifying here. A couple of lap times have come up so far, and it's Moreno Sarica and Josh Thompson at the moment They find themselves provisionally at the front of the field, but of course, no, not everybody set their lap times yet. People are still getting themselves prepared.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a long lap, as you say, so I think there'll be enough time to just do 2 around here, whereas Nürburgring, it was only 1 lap. They had to kind of nail it. Talked a little bit about that risk percentage and whether you just wanted to get a banker or you wanted to go for it. And I actually did ask a few guys that question after that race because I thought it might carry over here. And they obviously, there was going to be, well, you're just going to go for it. So I expect nothing less this time around either, but qualifying is going to be very important. Yes, you draft. Yes, you can make up positions, but you don't want to have to take too many risks in this race, no doubt. So cool track. So much history, like we say, and it's one of those ones that before Sim, well, like I suppose many of the tracks that I know I've learned through Sim, but before even iRacing in my time on there, a lot of the other games that I played didn't have this track involved, and it was one of the cool ones that I actually just wanted to drive around slowly and kind of look around because there's so much history here. It's very cool. I think Sim's very cool for that. Even preserved tracks that no longer exist, there's a really cool relevancy that Sim has.
Yeah, absolutely. As we look at Brian Lockwood, the American, we'll just step away from him. Maxim Ramstein, he's been one of your rookies this season, has Maxim, and getting sort of involved in instants here and there throughout the season, so it's not been the best. Currently 27th in the standings for him, and he's working his way out towards Indianapolis. So into that braking zone on the left, onto the brakes for Arnage. Very, very tricky corner. You want to go over that curb on the outside. Oh, now Jack Sedgwick, man from Leeds. That's just down the road from me is Jack. If he's from Leeds, he's going along. The driver from Yorkshire in that Inex racing car. Here we are into Indianapolis once again with Jack, and he's been another one he's racing every season of this championship, and it's just not been his year at all. Down in 34th at the moment. I think he's just wanted to maybe try and take some momentum so that if he does end up qualifying for World Championships next season, then he's got a bit of momentum going into that. But yeah, the driver who's wanting a bit of momentum, Sebastian Job heading out the Porsche curves.
Yeah, best named corner on the circuit, obviously. But look, there is something about that momentum. We talked about it with Mitchell de Jong at the end of last season. It was his best string of performances for 4 races. He got the bulk of his points in that time, as did Graham Carroll. Now, for Graham, it didn't really translate as much, but Mitch has been phenomenal throughout the course of this season. So you're right, for a guy like Jack, and well, looking at the point table right now, okay, he's only scored 18 to hit 20th. He does need 106 currently, so it is a big ask, but you can still requalify and take that momentum forward.
Well, we just saw Sebastian Job provisionally on pole position. Scrap that, because Josh Rogers has reached the top of the standings now. The king of qualifying is back, and Charlie Collins wasn't that far behind him either. So even though it is a really long lap around here, as we said, over 13 kilometres, just 0.2 of a second covering the top 3 out there on track. And well, Car 24, Mitchell de Jong, he'll be hoping to be joining them at the head of the field. This is a track where you don't necessarily have to qualify on pole. It's all about that slipstream, all about that draft. Mitchell de Jong finds himself 7th on the grid. Good to see provisionally at the moment, Jamie Fluke 5th for the grid. So great to see the Northern Irishman. I was chatting to him during the week, and he was saying he was feeling good about this round of the championship. So he'll be hopefully getting himself some good points here, because again, this has not been his season out there. Jeff Giassi, the only driver yet to score a time, considering where he is on the track, he's not going to finish the lap either.
No, absolutely not. Only 1 minute and 58 seconds left in qualifying. It's a 4-minute lap time, as you just said. I'll bring it up because I normally do, but air temp right now is 21.4, track temp 29.4 degrees Celsius. So not too hot. This shouldn't be too much of an issue. And the tires here do get quite a break down the long straights. Doesn't mean you can't run obviously as much toe or camber as you might like to, because that's obviously going to take a toll in a straight line, but you can certainly let them breathe, and that means these guys can push quite a bit in some of these corners. We already saw, I think it was when we were looking at Brian Lockwood and Jack Sedgwick, how much commitment corners like Indianapolis have, and I think that is so good because you actually can attack it really aggressively, but you've got to get set up to immediately get on the brakes after it for for Anaj. So it's super cool the way that it kind of all links together, and it's a corner you can definitely be aggressive with.
And you'll have noticed drivers in qualifying driving down the middle of the road down Mulsanne Straight and along here as well, because of course it is a public road is most of this track. It's got the crown in the road for drainage, but what that does is it actually helps the aerodynamics of the car, doesn't it? Because it brings the ride height effectively slightly closer to the ground. Yeah,
absolutely. Very good point, because it will definitely function that way down the straight. But the other aspect of it too is you want to be on the top of the crown, because the race cars, it's such tight steering, and again, running different camber settings and a lot more contact patch than your street car, it actually will get pushed a little bit. You don't want to have to fight that steering either, because any steering input at all, the slightest bit, anytime you're not perfectly going straight, you're actually losing speed. You're not maximizing that potential. So there's two reasons to do it, but yeah, absolutely right. The aero is a big part of it. And you can see Alejandro's kind of snaking around trying to stay on top of it.
Yeah, he's just getting out there, getting a feel of the conditions before we head into the race session. So the last couple of seconds are counting down in qualifying. The time is running out for all the drivers out there today. And, well, we will be getting ourselves set for the sprint race here of round 9 of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup here on the Porsche and iRacing social and media channels. And we'll be getting you your grid up on screen momentarily here on the race. But I can tell you that it was the Australian Josh Rogers who qualified on pole position. And alongside him is Charlie Collins, the young Brit, second place on the grid with Sebastian Job third and Dame Warren in fourth. Jeremy Fluke, great result for him for the Northern Irishman in fifth ahead of Jeremy Bootsloop. Mitchell de Jong, Alejandro Sanchez, Diogo Pinto. There we go. There's the graphic up on screen. Yeah, Diogo Pinto, good position in 9th, and Tommy Erstgaard rounding out the top 10. Notable people further down in your grid there. So, I mean, Kevin Ellis Jr. and Zach Campbell down on row number 8. They'll be disappointed to be that far down the grid. And, well, looking down, Graham Carroll is down in 26th place. Josh Thompson, the man that you were chatting to, down on row 11 as well. So there's a real mix-up on the grid here. Jeff Giassi, with no time in qualifying, he's got to do the hard yards here.
Absolutely. And just to mention Graham Carroll as well, actually, we didn't see it at the end of Nürburgring, but originally he was issued quite a harsh penalty for a collision that was caused, and it was a reaction. He thought he was getting pushed into the pit lane and kind of overreacted a bit. He made a big case to appeal it. They let it go through with Porsche. They let him back on into a normal no penalty situation. But he was very adamant that, I'm 100% focused on helping Sebastian at this point. And this weekend, it's all about being up at the front. So that's not where he wanted him started. Whereas, okay, it may seem like a stretch. You've got Josh Rogers way ahead in the championship. He's in the perfect position with his wingman right beside.
Well, the green flag is dropped. And away we go for the sprint race of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup penultimate round at Circuit de la Sarthe. The grid sweeping through the Dunlop curve into the Dunlop chicane for the first time. Onto the brakes, cold tyres, cold brakes. How will they all cope with that one? Sebastian Job caught out a little bit, and Dame Warren's going to go side by side with the 2020 champion. And he's not having fun out there. Jamie Fluke as well. He's working together with Jeremy Bootsloop. Of course, it's his home race here for Jeremy. Frenchman wanting to get a good result here through Tête Rouge for the first time. This is the first place where you can really get affected by a slowdown penalty if you run too far wide. And look at the gap at the front already. Josh Rogers and Charlie Collins are trying to make a breakaway here, Matt. That's exactly what they want there.
Yep, and it's all due to the fact that Dane and Sebastian got into it early. That allowed that gap. Now, they should still be able to get close enough within the draft. I think they're just going to be tight enough to have a little bit of a slipstream effect, so they might be a bit close going into the Mulsanne corner, but that's exactly what they can afford, and that's what I was talking about. If the front guys get that gap, they can use the draft to their advantage. Whereas if everyone stays in tow, you can't play as many games and get away with it. So already we're going to see a swap. This is unsurprising. Charlie's going to go out around. I wouldn't be surprised if Josh just concedes this position, allows it to happen easily, because again, if they battle, that gap goes away as well. So this is smart. Just leapfrog each other and pull each other forward in this race, as Seb's going to do the same thing behind.
It's a 3-lap race here in this sprint race, so not the most amount of time, but plenty that could go on behind Seb Job. You saw he was getting a little bit tetchy, a little bit close between him and Dane Warren. Job finding himself back into third place, though, with that move into the second of the Mulsanne chicanes. Right now, your front two, well, that gap that they had got at the start, that's pretty much gone away now, as Job is now going side by side with Warren again. So we're going to be seeing this. This is going to be a feature of this race here today. That's the reason why I'm not getting too excited about every single move that's been made, but look at that squeeze from Dane Warren.
Yeah, and the issue with that is you can see exactly how Charlie Collins and Josh Rogers went about business. You know, you pass me here, we hit the next chicane, I get the next draft, I'll pass you back. Keep it clean and keep your speed for the corners. Sebastian's trying to get by Dane Warren and get to that battle, and they actually ended up going side by side into Mulsanne corner, and that's a problem because that slows them down a little bit more. Now, thankfully, they didn't lose too much, but those are the small details that can cost you a lot in this draft race.
Looking at my timing sheet, we have lost two of the Brits, Josh Thompson and Jack Sedgwick, early on in this race. They are in the pits, they are out of this one, and they're going to start the feature race at the back of the grid. Of course, remember, the top 8 that finish, they will be inverted for the grid for the feature race. So at the moment, Tommy Erstgaard is in that prime spot. But you look at that queue of cars, that queue of traffic, it's like the M25 on a bank holiday Monday. It's just absolutely chocker, nothing between any of them.
And everyone driving just as fast. I've done the M25 once. It was a good experience being on the wrong side of the car.
And look at the speed that they carry through there, and look at how close they get to the wall, and that's how committed you have to get through the Porsche curves, isn't it? You've got to use all of the track through there.
Yeah, and the karting S's as well. I mean, they are very sweeping. You're trying to carry speed, but you're going for late apexes, so you can't really let the car out as much as you want, and they're all momentum and are very tricky, and definitely, in my opinion, the most technical section of the track, aside from braking. I mentioned braking earlier. That in itself is the most important skill in racing, in my opinion. People who can brake very accurately and keep the car balanced have a huge advantage. But in terms of the track, I think running through those, the Porsche S all the way down to the front straight pretty much is very technical.
David Williams and Max Ramstein have got slowdown penalties through the final chicane, and that is going to hurt them bad. So they've dropped down the order here. But the front three, they're together, and then there's a little bit of a gap between Sebastian Job and Dane Warren. So Job has been able to get away from the Australian. So now it's an Australian and 2 Brits at the front of your field, then an Australian in 4th. Northern Irishman Jamie Fluke in 5th, having a good run so far. But we're on lap 2 of this race. When they reach Mulsanne corner, we'll be at the halfway point of this race. But everybody's just behaving, or seeming to be behaving anyway, and keeping themselves out of trouble. Because if you pick up, this is a very good point here, Matt. If you pick up any damage on your car here, it's going to affect you all the way down these straights. Yep,
and the draft, see, at best, it's going to help you some put, but it's not going to drag you along like it will with everyone else. So it might help you a bit, but it's going to severely punish you overall. Just to note as well, we talked about Josh Thompson and Jack Sedgwick, 2 guys we mentioned pre-race. Both of them look to be a lap down already and not running. Sindra Setsos has just joined them on the red and the timing screen as well. So not the best day for them. Graham Carroll's the last of the runners right now. Not what you'd expect. 26th, Maximilian Benecke. In the sprint, points only go to 20th as opposed to 25th in the feature. And this is exactly what we talked about. Some of those guys that need those points to get to 20th, capitalize on the usual suspects not being up there, you can jump in pretty quick.
Marino Sarica in car 69 in 13th place. Currently behind Thomas Tetela, the Finnish driver in front of the Italian Sarica. Concentrating, you can just see, you see, look at that. It's very plain. There's no real stress on his face. He's not looking like he's straining or he's stressed. He's just very calm. And that's what you need to be in a race car. You need to just be calm and methodical. You can't let emotions take over, because if you get stressed or you get wound up too much, you're using energy that you really don't need to be using out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I will say, like, so many tracks that you're so busy on, Nürburgring, but you have these long straightaways. You just really have to draft. And okay, it's a technical skill and I don't want to downplay it, but they are straightaways a lot of times where you'll snap your belts in a real car, you'll look at your delta, you'll check mirrors, make sure everything's good on the dash, use these to settle yourself down. So Le Mans is very good for that. And that's why I think for a 24-hour race, it's so good, because you're not necessarily working hard every single second, and it allows you to stay at a peak performance for longer over the course of the race, if that makes sense, instead of being worn out or missing detail, what the case may be. So yeah, you definitely got to be mentally smart about that and not get too involved. Now, obviously, with Kevin Ellis Jr., now we're back into the corners. Now we're at the end of the straights. We're on braking. This is when you've saved it for. Now you're going to let your mental capacity get ramped up.
Yeah, that was Marina Sarica that he's just passed. So both Zach Campbell and Kevin Ellis Jr. then have overtaken Marina Sarica that we were on board with a little bit earlier. And that's them being able to move forward here. Tommy Erstgaard then. We're on the T-bar, we're on the roof cam here through Porsche curves, and you look at the speed that these cars carry through here. They've not got the greatest amount of downforce on these cars. Yes, they will be getting some downforce from that rear wing there, but it's quite a car that you've got to work the wheel at and work the throttle as well.
Absolutely, yeah, and a little bit less so, I think, in iRacing, but in real life, a lot of these guys driving Cup cars, you'll actually hear them kind of on-off throttle more abruptly than you might with other cars. And a lot of that is trying to use the diff and use the gears to rotate these cars with that rear engine. So they are very technical. And some of that skill does translate over to iRacing. It's very hard to get right without, I suppose, feeling the butt, or at least that's my excuse. These guys seem to do a better job of it than me.
Well, Tommy Erstgaard finds himself in the hot seat there in 8th place. That's where he wants to be to get pole position for the feature race here. But we have started the final lap of this race. And it's Charlie Collins in 2nd place behind the Australian and 2019 champion Josh Rogers. Sebastian Job is in 3rd place. Now, Alejandro Sanchez, either he's got a fault with a button or he's really trying to put off Tommy Erstgaard there.
So what's your opinion on lights, Paul? Is it rude or is it fair game?
I think it's unnecessary.
I don't think I get distracted by it. But it depends on the intention. And truthfully, it shouldn't. Any focused driver shouldn't be distracted by it. But I understand sometimes when they're angry, that's kind of annoying because they're trying to let you know. But it's the reason I ask is I accidentally bound my talk radio key for Discord to my light button, and one whole race, apparently, I was flashing the guy in front of me like every single lap, and after the race, he messaged me rather angrily. So I quickly changed that bind afterward.
Yeah, I do like to get on the radio and remind them that their lights do work every time that they flash them. But
man, Alejandro,
this is a battle for the lead then. Sebastian Job going to the outside here, and he's going to find himself to the head of his field, although Josh Rogers is going to fight that one. I don't think that Job wants to be at the head of the field yet. He wants to wait for either the run down to Mulsanne or the run down to Indianapolis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could even go. That's probably where you'd want to be there, but you've got the run to Porsche curves as well. If you can get out of Arnage fast enough, there's still a good draft down Poussin. So this is going to be tight. You're right. Sebastian doesn't want to go, but this is the problem. He's under pressure now from Charlie Collins, and they box him out. He has the inside. He's going to have to be so accurate on the brakes. Josh just hangs the car at the apex a little bit. Charlie sneaks in. Seb gets compromised on his run, and that might be enough. I don't blame him for that. That's a little bit tough, touch and go. But technically, the racing line is between the white. The red is the runoff, so Sebastian's entitled to track space there.
As they head on down to Indianapolis, and Job, almost a quarter paneling there between the two of them. And it's Job to the head of the field then, although never right off Rogers or Collins in this one. This battle isn't over yet. Into Indianapolis as Jamie Fluke behind as well, trying to battle with Dane Warren. So the front three are getting caught by the rest of the field. There was a car out of shape behind. That was Jeremy Bootloop losing control a little bit in towards Arnage. The flashing lights are still going on for Alejandro Sanchez. He's currently in that 8th place where he wants to be. But Job now, he knows how important this is. He needs to get and stay ahead of Josh Rogers to score himself some good points in the championship. But Rogers going to the inside of Porsche curves. Those two, they're going to work through Porsche curves side by side on this final lap here in the sprint race. A little bit of door banging there, paint traded between the two of them. over the curb, Rogers. That's not the ideal line through there. That can compromise him into the karting S for the final time in this sprint race. Oh, it's Rogers in front. Is it going to be a last-ditch dive into the chicane? Is Rogers going to try and help Charlie Collins make his way through? Well, Job has to slot in behind Rogers. He can make a move here into this final one, but Rogers, can he get the run out the chicane? He does, and the Australian is going to take victory here in the sprint race of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup round number 9. The rest of your field are going to charge their way through, but that picked up in that final lap. We thought it was going to be a last lap dash, and that's exactly what we got there.
Oh, that was brilliant. I mean, Sebastian went because he was under pressure. He had to. He can't sit back and get 2 cars down Boson, like I said, into Porsche Curve. And then what a job by Joshua, to hold that inside, and he just gets enough ahead to control the turn in at the end of the S's for a competitive car brand corner that I won't name. That set him up. I mean, he had control of the corner, but it's very difficult, you're right, not to be opening that corner up and have to hold the inside apex the whole way around. So very well done by Josh.
So there you go. There's the results. Josh Rogers, the Australian, first place. Sebastian Job, the Brit, in second, alongside fellow compatriot from the UK, Charlie Collins. Dane Warren, the Australian, in fourth. And then Jamie Fluke, fifth place, the Northern Irishman. Fantastic result for him. One of his best results of the season. In fact, is the best result of the season for him. Mitchell de Jong in that battle for second place in the championship, down there in sixth place. And you can see the field. Max Benneker managing to get a single solitary point at the end there of that race, down in 20th place. Running down through the rest of your results very shortly. But that was a tremendous opening race of the afternoon here. And these drivers, well, they'll have to get themselves all set up. There's the rest of your results. All those drivers who did not score. Graham Carroll in 25th. Alejandro Sanchez actually classified outside of 27th.
Interesting.
As down in 27th. So he must have had a slowdown penalty at the end. But we're going to get a Vodafone replay here, Matt.
Yeah, I'd like to see with Alejandro, because in this shot, or this picture, he's still there with his lights flashing, whether it's a broken button or not. Oh, no. Mac Backup just absolutely smokes it. I believe that's Jack Sedgwick, is it not?
No, it's Thomas Tetzel.
You're right. Sorry, the teammate car. Yeah, and here, okay, so it is Alejandro. You're right. He gets tapped off, lost the rear end going in through the karting S's, the back part of it. Bit of a tap, and out he went. We were already focused on the front fight, so that's literally 3 corners from the line, and he was on for a fairly decent result. I think he was about 8th or 9th, potentially even looking for that pole position in the reverse grid.
Yeah, he certainly was. He was in a strong position to try and get the reverse grid pole, that is for sure. But yeah, as I say, all the way down in 27th at the end of that one. But that battle at the front, Matt, was tremendous. Sebastian Job having to fight, first of all, with Dane Warren through the race to get himself in a position to fight for the lead there at the end. But really close, door banging through the Porsche curves. That's not exactly ideal through there.
No, not at all. I love it with this series that they're willing to do that, because that would scare the hair straight off of me. Scare the cast straight off of me, I suppose, at this point. But that was just as crazy as you can get. And so much speed, you're under maximum load. You're already, like, the rear end of these cars through there, again, there's not a ton of downforce, good amount, to be fair, but compared to, most race cars, not a lot. And they're going through there and swapping paint, which disrupts the way that the momentum changes already when it's maxed out. I mean, that's craziness. That's just incredible control from both of them.
Well, Matt, take it away with race winner, Josh Rogers.
Absolutely. Yeah, Josh, another great victory for you this season. That one was close. I wasn't sure where Seb got the draft done, and then he did obviously try to protect his line going down the straightaway. I wasn't sure you were going to get him back, but that was a committed move.
Yeah, no, that was stressful. There was a lot of things going through my mind. Obviously, I think in the situation I'm in, I probably shouldn't have taken that risk. But I had enough trust in Sebi that we were going to be able to have a good run through the Porsche curves there. And yeah, there was a little bit of bumping, a little bit of rubbing, but I think it was what you want to see really from racing. It's respectful, clean driving. So no, it was nice up the front. It wasn't as chaotic as what I expected it to be, but I'm sure the feature will be a little bit different.
Yeah, winning from pole's not easy here. It's you don't really want to be at the front of that draft queue. 3 laps though, you seem pretty calm about it, and you and Charlie seem to work pretty well together.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it's kind of the situation where you have to race, otherwise you tend to get swallowed up a little bit. So that was kind of my mindset going into it anyway, was to kind of take any opportunity you have, so that you're not the one getting disadvantaged from it. But no, it was it was nice up front. I think we had a bit of a breakaway right at the beginning, which gave us a little bit of breathing space, but ultimately that was gone really quickly. But fingers crossed from the feature we can have a similar race. I'm not sure how the maths is adding up at the moment, but we'll just go out there, do the best job we can, stay out of any potential lap 1 trouble, and go from there.
Yeah, I'll leave the maths to you. I'm not going to get involved in that one, but I think you're right. There's probably keep it smart at this point in your position. You got a great buffer right now in the championship. That must feel really good.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's not something at all that I expected coming into this point in the season. So fingers crossed, we'll keep pushing and we'll see what happens. All right,
well, best of luck in the feature.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, Paul, that's absolutely right. I mean, he's in such a great position right now. He's won this sprint race, which he said, he didn't even need to take that move, but he trusted Seb, which I love that those guys can be at the pinnacle of this sport, both respectively the only 2 defending champions we have. Josh is in the hot seat right now, and yet still has the trust with Seb to say, hey, yeah, we can battle like this, and that's a great rivalry.
Well, will the battling continue into the feature race? 6 laps are coming up after this.
It doesn't matter where you're from, who you grew up rooting for, what you grew up watching, your home track, your favorite car, the series you've always wanted to race in. When you're ready to know what it's like, we're here, bringing you as close to the action as it gets with the ultimate sim racing experience. With a community of hundreds of thousands just like you. This is iRacing, and here, every day is race day.
Welcome back then to the penultimate round of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, powered by iRacing here on the Porsche and iRacing media channels. This is currently the live standings as they are at the moment, heading into, after that first race, the qualifying and the sprint race. As you can see, 123-point lead for Joshua Rogers right now over Mitchell de Jong, with Sebastian Job in 3rd place now. So those two battling it out. But there, in the yellow numbers, is the gap to 20th. And, well, look at Moreno Sarica there, has moved up into 20th now, Matt.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we talked about, right? You just need one good result. The guys at the back, they're always there or thereabout. They just don't seem to get that last little bit out of it. And you get one good result, you're suddenly skyrocketing through, and qualification becomes a lot easier for you. Diego Pinto, another one that's now moved up to 13th in the championship. He's behind Graham Carroll and Alejandro Sanchez. That's incredible considering before last week, or last race, I should say, we weren't really mentioning him much other than being a rookie and being aggressive and, having some skill and some speed. The results weren't there, but now he's got 2 in a row in the top 10, and boom, he's well within that top 20 threshold.
Well, there's 135 points remaining in the season, and Diogo Pinto is the last driver who is within the bubble still in that one. So 13th down to 20th can still lose out. But look at that. David Williams, Johan Hart, Salva Talons, Daniel Lafuente, Mikael Gard, those 5 drivers there, they're still within a grasp here of automatical qualifying for next season's Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. But it's incredibly tight, and we focus on this at this time of year each and every season. That battle for that, I mean, you look at it all the way down the field, that everyone can still mathematically qualify automatically in that bottom half.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. You nail the top 10, you're pretty much set, I think. Well, depending, I suppose. I shouldn't say that. I won't do maths that way. But you're in a good position. And I love that. Competitiveness, we're seeing the usual suspects at the front, which I think highlights just how good they are, and especially at this level and this amount of talent in the field. But the battles are fierce throughout. I mean, don't discount everyone that's battling for a position in this race. If you're even being last place in this race, you're still a damn fast driver. So the fact that they're battling over 20th, it's just as fierce as being at the front, and it's just as important.
I mean, I had the pleasure of commentating on the qualifiers for this season, and the competition, the level of competition was intense in that. They've gone through a heck of an achievement to make it into the series, and then you have to step it up again. You think that you've reached the peak of what you can do, and then you've just got to take it up a notch again just to qualify automatically. Yeah,
it's remarkable. I mean, you can see why that top 20 is so important. I would not want the stress of having to requalify, because there are other very fast drivers that are equally as capable on the day. If you have a bad day in the qualifier, they have a great day. Maybe they just, you know, they've been waiting and they're knocking, they're hungry. Maybe there's some drivers that aren't in the series anymore that want back in. We know of a few names that we could probably bring off right now. I mean, you can't risk it. You can't. Yes, you've earned your place to be here, but you've got to keep fighting for it. You know, Formula One has a show called Drive to Survive for a reason, and it's no different. In fact, just as, I would say, worse than the PESC. It's so competitive. It's ruthless.
Yeah, single make series, and those drivers out there are absolutely on the ragged edge of what they can do in this Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car. But we are getting set towards the end of the little bit of a warm-up session that they have between the two races. So we'll be getting towards having a grid for you in just a moment's time here for the feature race. Of course, 6 laps of racing around here, so double the length of that sprint race. And we will be hopefully getting that grid up on screen right now. But yeah,
I don't know why they're leaving me on screen this long today. No one wants to look at me. I don't even want to look at me right now. Like, ugh.
So the guys are working away, but I can tell you that on pole position then it is Diogo Pinto who is on pole ahead of Jeremy Bootloop, Mitchell de Jong, Jamie Fluke set a 3rd and 4th place ahead of Dane Warren, Charlie Collins, Sebastian Job and Joshua Rogers down 7th and 8th place. Then the drivers start where they finish. So Tommy Erskard, Zach Campbell, Kevin Ellis Jr., Morena Sarika, Martin Krunker. Well, we're all set for the start of this race then. The feature race is go here on the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup. Great launch from Mitchell de Jong. He goes right for the middle of the track. He's got up ahead of Pinto. And well, he's heading in towards the first chicane, at the Dunlop chicane. It's de Jong ahead of Jeremy Bootloop. Bootloop's fighting that one though. He's not wanting to give that up at his home race. Jamie Fluke trying to go around the outside of your pole sitter Pinto, and he has managed to, well, he's trying to manage to do that into the S's for the first time. And look at this shot as they go through the S's here, absolutely cutting that curb as much as possible. They try and shorten the length of this track by every millimetre that they can. And then through Tete Rouge, down the Mulsanne straight for the first time. You can see a queue of cars, and then the 2 wide further back. Brian Lockwood and Jeff Giassi are the ones battling it out side by side further back, but heading towards the first chicane down the Mulsanne. People are trying to get themselves into a good spot early on here, Matt. They're trying to get themselves in that solid position as we're on board with Zach Campbell.
Yeah, the standout rookie of this season. He's been solid throughout, and once again, he's going to be making moves early, just behind Josh Rogers at this point. Side by side, in fact, with Tommy Østgaard, who has now found himself 8th and 9th. They're back and forth. This will be all the way down to the next chicane where they have to settle this and then try and go for it again. Josh Rogers is trying to work his way through, but so too is Sebastian Job. 3 wide in the background. Look at the draft at the front. That's almost a bump draft. I love it. Let's get them in there. Push them all the way down. That's how little Jeremy Bootloop wants to be in the lead. He could easily slingshot by, but why? He does not want to be the sitting target at the front.
Pinto and Warren, they are battling for 3rd and 4th place. Jamie Fluke's just lost a position to Charlie Collins now through the 2nd chicane. And Josh Rogers, who were on board with the Australian, heading down the final part of the Mulsanne straight out of that 2nd chicane towards Mulsanne corner. Fluke has managed to get himself back to 5th place. Looking from this onboard shot, onto the brakes for the first time. Tyres will be warm enough now, and the brakes, that they can really start pushing them to the limit here through Mulsanne. It's the run out the corner that you need. Get yourself into that draft, get yourself into the queue. It's almost like the queue at the deli counter. Take your number and head on into that queue. Sebastian Job trying to work his way past as well. Got ahead of Zach Campbell behind your 2019 champion, Joshua Rogers, that we're on with.
Yeah, the man trying to become a two-time champion, I suppose. So too, Sebastian Job was that man, but certainly the one that's in the position to do it. Charlie Collins just in front, keeps it pretty clean through the corners and through Indianapolis. The run to Anage. Another good braking point here. This is one that you rightly said is a slower corner than you think, especially because the sensation of speed and the average speed is so high around here. And you just come off one of the longest straights in racing, and all of a sudden, boom, you're going to a sharp right. It does feel quite slow, but everyone pretty tidy throughout. Josh is only one ahead of Sebastian right now, who's going to try and link onto this draft. Remember, double the laps in this feature race, so a little more time to settle in and not have to make moves too hastily, but that far down the order, you're going to want to pick off at least one or two every lap.
Yeah, you want to try and work your way forward as side by side, almost a little bit of rubbing through the Porsche curves there. And Pinto is the one who's come off worse from that. And he's got down to 4th place from 2nd. Jamie Fluke almost getting caught out by Charlie Collins behind him as well. So shows how one little mistake, get yourself offline into the Porsche curves, and then all of a sudden you're down a couple of places, and Pinto was lucky not to get freight trained even more, or even worse, in the wall.
I was thinking into the wall. Yeah, absolutely. That corner, you get offline, you get out of the draft, you start to lose that front end grip. Boom, you understeer straight into it. So did well to hold his position. Now here's a battle. We're focusing on the front a lot. You rightly said the closer battle is currently Mitchell de Jong and Sebastian Job. Now Sebastian may have gotten second in that sprint race, but look who's positioned himself brilliantly so far for this feature race. Mitch is out front. That's a significant points total and difference right now from 1st to 8th. So that would be pretty huge in the battle for 2nd.
It certainly would. Looking further down your field, Daniel Lafuente, that we're focused on right now in 20th place as they go through the S's here. And, well, if this is Alex Horn once again, which I think it is, then hats off to him, because he's been producing some great camera work for us all season. So tremendous stuff, Alex. Keep this up, because it is wonderful to see here. But onto the Mulsanne, the front 8 are together, and then there's a little bit of a gap between Job and Campbell. So we've got that little bit of a breakaway gaggle at the front of your standings. And the problem for Zach Campbell now is that front pack will just slowly drive away from him here, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. That gap that's being created is significant. That's exactly what we alluded to in the first race. Thought might happen, it didn't really, but you're starting to see the effects of it. Just to make note of it as well, by the way, I did have to double check my maths, but it's 24 points that would be the difference from 1st to 8th in the feature race. So it's 50 and 26 respectively. That would double the lead that de Jong had coming into the weekend. So very significant. And we're going to see a move. Not really too exciting. Pretty expected with the draft, but Jeremy out around de Jong at this point. Mitch isn't going to battle that too hard. All the way down, though, this every single person is benefiting from the one in front. The guys at the back are going to be screaming, trying to get back to this front pack. Sebastian's going to try and make a move as well.
Well, Sebastian Job was darting behind Rogers and Collins because they were side by side. They're just blocking the road right now. They're not letting Job go past. And he's just darting behind one or the other. Which one do I go with here for the draft? It's quite difficult. And all of this has actually allowed Zach Campbell to come back into that lead pack. Look at this. 3 at the front, battling away for the lead. And then Jamie Fluke battling away with Dane Warren. In 4th place is Jamie into Mulsanne corner. This is just fantastic stuff to see. All setting themselves down. Now this is actually the fastest part of the track down into Indianapolis, and it's such a tricky corner to get because the speed is so high here now.
Yep, absolutely. It's so quick. And commitment, that is insane to go 3 wide. That's just the little tiny kink leading down to Indy, and it's still that hairy through it. Oh, it's going to be twice as hairy up over the curve. That unsettles Pinto a little bit, but we know he's aggressive. He holds the outside, and I think he's going to get Bootaloo and Darnage.
Diogo Pinto, my goodness, he's taking the brave pills for the second race, that's for sure.
I think that kink's called golf corner. I mean, he was pretty much playing golf in the weeds on the inside on the way by right there.
Yeah, you don't want to end up in the rough here because that's usually an Armco barrier. As Mitchell de Jong must be loving that because while they're battling away, it's just giving him a little bit of a breather at the front here. He's not managed to break the slipstream here, but he will like that because it means that they're not focused on him in front. As actually Dane Warren has lost a position. You see on the timing tower on the left-hand side, lost a position to Josh Rogers just now. So Rogers moving forward in the field, and Sebastian Job, crucially for him, has got ahead of Charlie Collins.
Yeah, that is a significant change. Rogers as well is still 2 positions up, but Job getting by Collins is the first of the defenses, and it's really Young he needs to be thinking about at this point. Sebastian's going to try and get every point he can, so I suppose that still helps. But realistically, it's the battle against de Jong he needs to win to at least get second in this championship. To, you know, again, not a team's championship, but to satisfy Red Bull in that sense, because certainly they want the success from their drivers. And we'll see if he can make his way past now Dane Warren.
Start of lap 3 of this race. It is, as you can see on the graphics, de Jong, Pinto, Bouteloup. It's an American, Portuguese driver and a Frenchman at the front of your field. Jamie Fluke in 4th place with Josh Rogers. Dane Warren, 6th place, the Australian, ahead of Sebastian Job. Here we are on board with Salva Talens, the Spaniard, down in 29th at the moment. So he's towards the rear of the field, and this just shows how busy it is down there in the pack.
Just like we talked about between races, I mean, these battles are every bit as fierce. That is a consistent line of cars from first all the way down to this far in the field at 29th right now. It's ridiculous. And this is just as difficult for them back there. They have to be just as perfect, and the draft is the same thing. Here we go. Everyone's got the benefit, though. That's the issue. De Jong's the sitting duck. Everyone else has someone to link on to at this point, minus, you know, a few gaps here and there. But generally speaking, it's dipped that far back because you don't have that same speed advantage being at the end of it.
There are 33 drivers competing here today. All 33 are covered by 10 seconds, although Jack Sedgwick smoke at the chicane as well. Sedgwick has had to take to the escape road. He'll get a big slowdown penalty. But you saw a cloud of smoke there at that first chicane as well, with tyres being locked up. And it shows how easy it is to make one little mistake. Fortunately there at the Mulsanne Straight, you have got that little escape road that you can go down.
The interesting thing to me is that this is not really turning out to be what a lot of the drivers had predicted. In that, remember when, I think it was at Spa, in the interview, Sebastian thought he might get a qualifying ban for the contact he had with Charlie Collins. Now, it turns out he didn't, but he did say, if I get one, I hope it's Le Mans next, because his theory was he could just draft by everyone. Well, look at Alejandro Sanchez in this race, who unfortunately had the contact at the end and got moved back. Look at Graham Carroll. Those guys are both so fast, and they're not getting through this field because everyone has that toe that far down. So it's not as easy to just get by as they might have thought.
Yeah, 12 seconds now covering 1st to 33rd. I think that is
ridiculous.
It is incredible. We're halfway around the lap here on lap 3, and it's just absolutely incredible just how close this field is. But it shows, 1, the nature of the circuit, but 2, how competitive this field is, that they can be so close. And generally, so far so good, nobody's out the race. They're all still out there on track. Thibaut Casabon currently in 32nd place. He's at the right at the back of the queue. As Graham Carroll, that was Graham Carroll on the left running slowly. Something's happened. He's got damage. He's pulling over. He's out of the race.
Yeah, he absolutely is. I'd love to find a replay of that because we just saw him going slowly and coasting essentially down the edge of the circuit. So definitely a bent hood as we jumped on board. Something absolutely happened, whether it was in the draft, in a bump draft. If he's, I don't think they're quite high enough to the limit to be bumped over sort of the engine rev range, and it didn't look like engine to me. That looked like just constant damage. So be very curious to see what happens as Mitch continues to lead up front. Diego Pinto, though, this guy's just on fire lately. Another of the rookies in our field. We talked about Zach Campbell. Charlie Collins has been arguably the best of the bunch, but Diego's made a great move forward late in the season.
Yeah, he certainly has. He's been tremendous. As I could tell you, I was speaking to 1 or 2 of the drivers, and they were saying that it shouldn't affect them, the engine issue, if there's bump drafting. Oh, now I'm just looking at my timing screen. There has been drivers drop down. Max Benneker has dropped down. We'll notified of what's happened there. But right now we're going to have a look at what happened to Graham Carroll here on the Vodafone Replay.
But Graham's far to the right a shot right now. That's Alejandro. Okay, so pinball effect. Alejandro, yeah, comes across, taps one and 3 wide. Graham just gets absolutely smoked into the wall. Can't really do much about that. He's an innocent party in that, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that was Alexander Walters who he made contact with. And Walters is also down on pit road, so he is out of this race. So 2 drivers out of this one, but we're at the halfway point of this feature race here in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup penultimate round at Circuit de la Sarthe. And De Jong, Pinto, Bootloop at the front. Josh Rogers has moved forward to 4th place now here. And well, we've been seeing some overtaking happening here, but what do you think is your overtake of the year? Head on over to overtake.gg/PESC vote now, where you can have a look and see all the top 10 overtakes of the season so far. Vote on your favourite, and let's see what is overtake of the year.
Well, one overtake we should talk about is Charlie Collins back in front of Sebastian Job at this point. Bit of a gap between them as well, so he's done well the way, but this will close right back up in the Constantina effect of the first chicane. And away we go down the straightaway yet again as Sebastian links immediately back in. So pretty straightforward. 3 to go. We're going to start to see a few more moves for position, and already you can see Jeremy Bootlou's going to go just by procedure, go right back by Diego Pinto. So here's a look back, and this one is going to be Sebastian. Oh, okay, Mac Buckham. Is this going to be contact between the 2 of them?
So Backham has dropped. No, that's Dame Warren.
Dame Warren, that's right. Excuse me.
Warren, just lost the back end, sliding through the Porsche curves, the entry of Porsche curves, and Job had to get out of it. Then there's a bit of bumping and barging with Zach Campbell. Oh my goodness! Between the 2 of them, Job. I mean, he is. When he wants to be, he can really get his shoulders out and really tell you, all right, sunshine, I'm coming through here. Oh, look at this gaggle now for the lead here. They're all squabbling over Jeremy Bootloop, who finds himself at the front of your field now. De Jong and Rogers, though, they're going to go 3 wide. Are we going to see 4 wide using all of the road and then some? Well, Pinto's just stuck right now. He doesn't know where to go. Fluke, who we're on board with, he's kind of stuck where it is. You've got Charlie Collins and Sebastian Job around the way to the big contact. That's Bootloop and Job. That is a huge one between those 2. My goodness, Job's got damage to the front of his car, but that's less than Jeremy Bootloop, who was sideways on the track in the wall.
How does Job even come out of that and still look reasonably close to the front of shot? I thought he was going to get pinched to the wall and they were going to almost come to a halt. He's absolutely going to have damage. That will be costly, but man, we were almost 5 wide at that point. And in all of it, Josh Rogers gets up to 2nd. De Jong's on the outside. They don't want to get into it with each other because, okay, yes, Josh is the man in the lead of the championship right now, but De Jong's trying to beat Sebastian, and then Sebastian knows he needs to get up there. This is just so tense. The mentality of this fight is incredible. And just like that, we're nearly lost very serious protagonists in this entire season to a pretty fast and high contact incident.
I think if I was Jamie Fluke, who we were on board with at the time, I'd be wanting to change underpants after that, because just to see Sebastian Job suddenly appearing, and we were on the left-hand side of the track as well that we were on board with, to see him coming down the left-hand side there, down the hard shoulder, technically that is outside the bounds of the track because the white lines delineate the edge of the track down there. But the drivers are known to use that hard shoulder, but it can be a bit bumpy down there. Let's have a look then and see what happened in all of that. But Job will be significantly affected by it. In fact, he's dropping down the odd. Look at this. There you go. 3 wide. You see Jamie Fluke then closing up. You've got Charlie Collins getting involved here. Still 2 by 2 by 2. And look at Job. That's a very aggressive move.
He's trying to find the only space available, and I think when he came across, he doesn't. Yeah, first off, he came across very quickly, faster than he would have thought, and caught the grass. But I don't think he anticipated such a little amount of space, and he misjudged that. That unfortunately is a bit too aggressive from him.
And there's nothing that Bootloop could do there because he could go right because there were 2 cars to his right there. So it was an impossible situation that was always going to end up in disaster.
It's one of those ones you might say it looks brilliant if he pulls it off, but it's still foolish. And it was a pretty slim margin to get that right, I would say.
Well, Job, I could tell you, is dropping down to 20th place now as De Jong and Rogers at the front switch positions. 2 laps remaining here in this penultimate round of the championship. And, well, De Jong must be thinking right now, okay, I've got a good point here. Do I fight for the lead, or do I just... You can't... This is one of those tracks when you're in a queue like this, you cannot afford to back out and say, no, I'll just get the points. Because you will have an accident and you will end up back in the pits wondering what on earth just happened to your win. The bump draft in there.
I'm all for it, personally, bump drafting, but it's tricky. I mean, these cars don't have diffusers. You're running a pretty standard front bumper. You can get away with it. But yeah, it's definitely something that is frowned upon for a number of reasons. It's also something you have to be very careful about due to delicacies and overlapping and underlying. And Sebastian incident. He's just, I'm afraid, too aggressive in that situation. Not really much more space was available to be given, and he wasn't really entitled to that. So unfortunate, but yeah, you got to be careful with a lot of aero bits on a lot of cars, and also losing downforce. It's great for the draft, but bump drafting can be a bit tricky, and also obviously it is technically a form of contact. In a straight line, it's supposed to be considered safe, but you've got to be very careful about how you approach it as well.
And of course, they were going through that fast kink as well at that point, so the cars were naturally going to be moving around the track there at that point. I can tell you Sebastian Job has actually headed down onto pit road. He is done for this race here. Mitchell de Jong to the head of your field, and then it's everybody else really for third place right behind him, because they're all tripping over each other almost, 2 by 2. It's almost like Noah's Ark out there.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, keep in mind as well, Kevin Ellis Jr. is not that far back in this points battle for what would be third and second with Mitchell de Jong. So Sebastian's going to concede a handful of points here, quite a large tally. Kevin's only in 9th, mind you, but Charlie Collins is also 5 behind him, and he's in 3rd. 3rd is 40 points. That puts Collins right now on quick maths within 27. Oh, okay, that's not the gyroscope this time. That's an actual spin, and that's the contact.
And that was Matt Backham. So that was Job and Backham between the two of them. So Backham's found himself all the way at the back of the runners. And yeah, and Sebastian Job, he decided that was his day done after that incident. So that was another incident on this lap for Sebastian. So not being his feature race for him out there. But we're heading towards the start of the final lap here, Matt, of this round. And well, you look at it, De Jong, Rogers, Collins, they all work out the same outfit. There is no team racing here, but you must feel a little bit more comfortable when it's drivers that you know intimately out there.
Absolutely, yeah. That's one of the things that we talked about. And Diego Pinto was our example with Graham Carroll at the start of the years. Having a rookie behind you, you don't know as much what they're going to do, and you're a little bit more on edge about it, and you're watching your mirrors a little more. These guys have so much trust for each other that it definitely means you can push a little harder and have a bit more comfort and confidence of what's going on around you. That's awesome. I mean, I'll go to my experience because that's all I can really speak to, but when I race certain people at my track, I don't necessarily go wheel to wheel with as often. I'm a little more timid, but when me and Lee, who's my main competitor, get at it, we just go. It's gloves off, but we have a huge amount of respect and understanding of our driving styles, and it does absolutely change the way you battle with people.
Absolutely, as they head on through Tete Rouge then for the final time in this race, onto the Mulsanne straight. And those three at the front, De Jong, Rogers, Collins, have got Pinto behind. Looking a little bit further back here, battle for 6th place. Jamie Float does look to have a little bit of damage to the front left of his car. That will be affecting his top speed. Yep, there it is. There's damage front left. So that will be affecting his top speed down the Mulsanne. And that means that he's going to be a bit more of a sitting duck than he would like, with Kevin Ellis Jr., Dane Warren, Marina Sarica coming up behind. Martin Krunke in 11th place, gained 2 positions in this race so far. I could tell you that Josh Thompson's the man who's made the most positions in this race, with 11 positions gained here in this feature race, down in 21st for Josh. But the front 4 all together heading down the Mulsanne. They've got to be wary of that little bit of a curveball coming at them from behind, Diogo Pinto, because we've seen he will make moves and he'll try anything here.
Yeah, he absolutely will. And he's probably dropped a little bit further down in this battle than he would have liked to, considering he was battling for the lead for a bit, always in that third and second position. Now he finds himself fourth on this final lap, and it's Charlie, Mitch, and Josh in front of him, which is so difficult. Going to be a change for the lead. Josh Rogers, not battling it too hard, stays pretty respective through the breaking point, but Charlie's not. Charlie's gone off wide. Alejandro Sanchez, I believe that was, we just saw with contact as well, so I'm not sure exactly what's happened, but that's going to let Pinto back on the heels of Josh Rogers at this point. I need another look, because I didn't even think it looked like there was any jarring motion in the camera. He may have just got a wheel on the gravel.
Yeah, he got wide. Well, we'll have to look at that afterwards, because here comes Tommy Erskard to the outside. He wants to get another win here, does Tommy. He's to the front of the field. Diogo Pinto's decided to follow him 3 wide into Indianapolis. This is asking for trouble, but they sort themselves out momentarily because they've got Arnage coming up, the right-hander, the tight right-hander. Be careful of the tyre wall on the outside.
This looks like the formation lap to a rolling start. We're 2x2 the whole way back. I mean, the camber in Indianapolis allows you to hold the outside of it, but even through Arnage now, this is incredible.
It is De Jong and Erstgaard battling it out. Norway versus USA, and there's a little bit of Australia getting thrown in there as well into the Porsche curves. And Josh Rogers, De Jong's been hit, he's been tagged, he's around in the gravel trap. Oh my god, what on earth is this race going to give us? Well, Rogers is in the lead. Erstgaard and Pinto were almost punting each other off through the Porsche curves, and my goodness, all of a sudden Joshua Rogers is looking for back-to-back wins. There's a bit of rubbing behind. Zach Campbell has turned Pinto. There's a big accident. Can everybody work their way through? I don't think that they all have, but at the front, Joshua Rogers through the fine chicane. He can afford a smile if he wants to. Come on, give us a smile here, Josh. Across the line then to take victory here in the feature race of the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Super Cup. Well, we'll have to wait and see what happens with the final results out of that one. But my goodness, that was tremendous. And if you're Mitchell de Jong, you must be absolutely heartbroken by that one.
And no different for Diogo Pinto as well, who was on for another incredible result. That was the worst part. Very light contact, but so much speed. We talked about the Porsche corner and the karting S's. You're so loaded up on the tire, and the slightest touch is all it takes to overload and just push that center of gravity too far. And Mitch, there's no saving it at that point, unfortunately.
Well, it is the Australian Joshua Rogers who gets victory in both the sprint race and the feature race. It's a clean sweep with pole position as well before in qualifying. Tommy Erskard, second place ahead of Zach Campbell. The Italian Moreno Sarica, where did he come from? He finishes in fourth place ahead of Kevin Ellis Jr. Martin Krunker, David Williams, Jeremy Bootloop, Dane Warren and Jeff Giassi are the top 10. Daniel Lafuente, Mikel Gard, Maxime Ramstein with a good result in the end there. Charlie Collins, he'll be disappointed with that, down in 14th. Thomas Tetteler, Brian Lockwood, Sindra Setsource, Josh Thompson, Salva Talens and Ricardo Castroledo is your top 20. And well, they were all able to avoid the incidents at the end, because Jamie Fluke, he got caught up in all of that. Mitchell de Jong, 22nd, Anchan Guvan, Max Benneker, Pekka Toivonen, and then Jack Sedgwick, Matt Backham and Diogo Pinto. He was in a podium position all the way down in 28th. Here's the first thing then, Charlie Collins.
It just locked up on his own. It looks like there's a bit of a bump at the braking point. It looks like he almost had the car not settled enough, and therefore the center of gravity was still swinging kind of in a pendulum motion back to the right. It kind of skips, he loses it, and he's out of road space. So he just gets a wheel up onto the gravel. I would say that's completely on him under braking. And that's kind of what I was alluding to. I didn't see anything in the camera that suggested contact, but then this was just gloves off to the finish.
Yeah, this was tremendous stuff between the front four. And yeah, you're absolutely right in saying gloves off here, because they were going at it. Absolutely wonderful stuff to see. Through Indianapolis 2x2, how they were able to keep out of each other's way, I don't know. But it's into the Porsche curves that Mitchell will be ruin his day here. It's just the slightest of contact that Mitchell de Jong gets. He was coming alongside Tommy Erskard. He wanted to get back to the front of the field, and then Josh Rogers gets the run off both of them, gets the draft off of both of them, And who is it that makes that slightest of contact with De Jong? Oh, don't say it's Tommy Østgaard. I think it might have just been the slightest, and it is just slight. But then everything that happened with Pinto here.
Yeah, this is unfortunate because Pinto gets kind of caught up at the outside of Østgaard as a result of it. That slows him down just enough, and then here comes the contact. Very minor yet again. Down the inside, little touch, boom, gone. He nearly saved it. But unfortunately, that man, guess what? He comes right back into the line of fire, and there were a few casualties today.
Yeah, Jamie Fluke, the man who, if he didn't have bad luck, he wouldn't have any luck at all. He was the first one who found Pinto's car absolutely sideways on. But well, let's head on over to the Buzz post-race show here then, Matt. And this has been absolutely tremendous action. Again, the last lap giving us all of the excitement in both the sprint race and the feature race here today.
And I've got to be honest, usually I have some sort of semblance of who's going to result on the podium. And I kind of think to myself, what am I going to ask them? I have no idea who's even on the podium now. It was so confusing at the end. So this will be fun to speak with them. And obviously Josh gets another win. A double at Le Mans is pretty ridiculous. So he's probably the place to start once he joins us inside the room here. But I mean, incredible race, Paul. It's so hard to predict anything in this series.
Yeah, it was absolutely tremendous to see all of that. Yeah, you don't want to see races or battles end like that towards the end, and that's unfortunate. That's the nature of how it is. But you take it away, Matt.
Yeah, we get to sit here and scream and yell about it, but it's the stewards at the end of the day that have the more complicated decision. Josh, I don't think yours is very complicated. You just stayed clean, like you said, and it actually worked out this time, and you come through with a double win at Le Mans.
I didn't necessarily want to fight so early, but because we're all so close to each other, bumper to bumper, especially in the Mulsanne corner, there's not really much you can do. Like if you're wanting to sit behind, especially if you've got someone else who's trying to kind of move their way forward. So, yeah, I was just trying to do what I could there. And yeah, it was, I think it was maybe lap 3 or something on the way down to Indy. It was very, very sketchy there. I think we might have even been forward at one point. I was just trying to leave as much space as I could, but obviously the track's only so wide. So, but no, it was, yeah, it was, it was close in the end there for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's that obviously was well earned. It was a bit tough for your teammates behind. Talk your perspective of that last couple of corners, I suppose. Obviously, it's going on in the mirror, but you're still well aware, I'm sure.
I need to have a look at it. I'll actually have a look at it now. I mean, initially, I felt like I might have been had something to do with it. I think after looking back at it, I left a lot of space. So, but yeah, it's unfortunate for Mitchell. Honestly, he drove a mega race up front there. He controlled it really, really well. So it's sad to see it in that way, really. But yeah, at least for me, I knew at least from the sprint race, it definitely worked. Being second from Mulsanne corner onwards and passing into the Porsche curves. So for me, yeah, I was trying to do the same thing, and in the feature, and it definitely worked out for us. I think it's very, very difficult to pass after the Porsche curves. It's doable, but it's very, very difficult and very easy to cover off. So yeah. I knew that was kind of the play to make, and ultimately, yeah, we ended up doing that.
Well done. Congratulations. Another great win in the season.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think Paul, that's kind of interesting to sum it up that way as well, when you kind of look at that he was looking to make that pass deeper and at the last possible second, because such is the strength of the draft.
It certainly was absolutely brilliant stuff. And yeah, those types of situations do force yourself into that. But let's have a word with the second place driver then, Matt.
Yeah, Tommy Østgaard, who's been so close on so many occasions this season, but puts it all together. Lovely blue accenting on that car, I do say. But Tommy, that was pretty crazy. I don't know. You tell me from your perspective of the last few corners.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy. Wasn't quite sure if I was going to go 3 wide on the back straight there, but it worked out. And then, yeah, I don't know what happened with Mitchell. It got really close there. So if that's on my end, I'm really, really sorry. And it's a big shame as well, losing 2 cars on the last lap with Charlie and Mitchell being up there. So yeah, it doesn't really feel like a I didn't really figure it.
Yeah, it's a tough one, certainly, from your perspective as well, though, but not to take away and put too much of a shadow on it, because it's still a good result, and you still had to do quite a bit of overtaking and drafting. Was it tough to pick your battles, or were you just looking for every opportunity in that situation?
Yeah, especially in the sprint race, I think I was maybe a little bit too cautious, especially because I had 2 teammates ahead, and you don't want to disrupt too much. But then, I just lost out on the 8th place, which I was a bit annoyed with. But yeah, I just got my attack mode on and tried to get through as many places I could in the feature, and I was lucky with quite a few crashes happening in front of me, so that certainly helped. But yeah, I think happy overall with my performance this weekend, considering everything. But would have been better if we'd stayed with the 2 more Quanah cars up there on the.
Well, thank you very much for that. I didn't fare quite as well with crashes today, Tommy, but yeah, obviously for the team, that's one thing. For you, you get a good result. I think we're also going to speak now with our lovely 3rd place man, our final podium position, rookie Zach Campbell, who had a pretty solid race throughout, but again, some drama toward the end. Zach, you got involved in it, but you still had to position yourself throughout the course of the race. How was the weekend for you overall?
A struggle. Actually, Le Mans is my worst track. I definitely didn't expect this result at all. Obviously, my bed's not made, so it was certainly a surprise. But first thing before we get into anything, I just really have to say sorry to Diogo, Jamie, anybody caught up in that last lap deal. I just tried to peek Diogo into the corner just to try and spook him a little bit, and checked up before I thought he would, and just got in the back of him and caused a big crash that shouldn't have happened. I'll probably end up sending the money from the podium to Diogo because he deserved it 100%.
Wow,
it's just
good for you.
It's not worth doing it. I don't like to do stuff that way, and so yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that it happened, but I'm still happy with the result. I mean, starting P16 to finish P3, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, well, I mean, that is the aspect of it. And I same as I said to Tommy, I don't want to focus too much on the negative ending in that sense, in that context, that controversy. But you did well in the rest of the race. And again, you had to fight through in what was a very hard field to overtake in and actually make positions, because it was so easy to be overtaken as well. So you did have to calculate it. How did you kind of figure that out as you went? As you say, this is a weaker track for you. Were you surprised with that competitiveness?
So I think it just comes from that I started out doing NASCAR stuff on iRacing and doing IndyCar stuff for a while. And a lot of the pack racing aspect of that really applied here. So it wasn't so much about how much pace you had. If you were within the same second, then you were going to be on the rev limiter anyway, pretty soon on the straightaway. So you just had to pick under braking zones which line would move. And it was normally the line with the fewest cars. And so it's all about just decision making and figuring out where the other cars are going to go, what you're going to do. And so that's the biggest thing. And I think that's where that strength was just solely in being able to figure out what other cars were doing and how to get around them. Yeah, well, you did well enough job, I suppose. Get up on the podium for the final, and good sportsmanship to say as well. You'd be happy to send that to Diago, so because he did drive an excellent race as well. So he was certainly someone that I was quite thrilled with. Thanks very much. Congratulations. 1 race to go in the season. Yep. That's going to be interesting. It's going to be Monza. I think it'll be a lot like this. Before we go, I just got to thank everyone at RLL Esport, Ray Hall, Letterman Lane again. They do a fantastic job supporting us, helping us out with everything. Got to thank my spotter, Brandon Trano, my normal spotter, Christopher Demerit, my parents for letting me have all this in my room. And yeah, no, I'm thrilled, and I'm really excited to get to Monza and see what we can do. Perfect. You can tell you did NASCAR, because that was about as good of a sponsor plug as I've ever heard. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's the goal. Perfect. Well, thanks so much. And Paul, I mean, if you're still with me here, that was kind of what you said, that this was the Le Mans would be kind of the NASCAR of PESC in the drafting sense.
Yeah. That was as close as you could get here on the road side of things. But we'll look where we're going for the finale. If you thought that was high speed, well, the Cathedral of Speed in Europe, Monza, 24th of April. Make sure you get that in your calendars, everybody, because that is always an exciting race as well. Slipstreaming, late-breaking moves into the chicanes, and of course the history that goes with Monza as well. An absolutely tremendous venue that we'll be heading to. So April 24th, 2 weeks' time, same time as always, 7 o'clock GMT. for all the action here on the iRacing and Porsche media channels. But Matt, I mean, Monza, what a finale. We get it each and every season, and it always produces tremendous racing.
I certainly am looking forward to it. I think it's going to be phenomenal. Drafting, but a bit of a shorter circuit and some really nice technical corners that just makes it seem continuous, but very aggressive and on edge in that same way.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it's always a round that I look forward to. One, because it's the end of the season, although I don't want the season to end. It's been absolutely tremendous stuff from these drivers. But it does have to come to an end, and what a venue it is for us to finish off the season. Here are your updated points. The maximum amount of points that you can gain from one final weekend is 85 points, which means that Josh Rogers' position is unassailable there. Of course, we will crown the champion next time out at Monza. Mitchell de Jong, he is in a strong position now in second place ahead of Sebastian Job, with Kevin Ellis Jr. just ahead of Dane Warren and Charlie Collins. But look at that battle for the top 20. Marina Sarica, 8 points inside that top 20.
Yeah, remarkable job. And you're right, we can't officially call it, but that is Josh pretty much two hands on the trophy. He's just waiting to be told he's allowed to pick it up at this point. So super good job. But that battle for second is on, and Kevin Ellis Jr. is, not too far off of it either. So he could certainly upset Sebastian if he has another bad weekend. All the way down, Marino Soroka, there you go. One good weekend. We said 4th place today. Boom, he's up to 20th. That's a qualifying position. Remarkable job by him. And Diogo Pinto, thankfully, is still in 16th, but imagine he would be, I think, ahead of Graham in the points after today, if I did the math right. I mean, he had a remarkable charge today as well.
Well, the top 13 are secure in their position, pending any stewards' reviews, of course. But that top 13, they'll be breathing a sigh of relief. Here's that bottom half of the field. David Williams, well, he is in the hot seat. He wants to get forward. And Josh Thompson in 30th is the last driver who can potentially get requalified. But I think he'll be honest with himself and say that a perfect score next time out is going to be a long shot. So really, it's that top, say, 4, the 21st to 24th, really, that are in with a shout still.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be fun. It's going to be fun to watch. And we're definitely going to have to come up with a means of trying not to confuse everybody and keeping that tracking going on, because it's doing maths live is always difficult. But there's some names definitely to take note of in these positions. David Williams, Daniel Lafuente, lots of those guys could be ones to watch for sure. And I will try to make that as simple. I might have to get out what are they called? The old beads that you moved across the counting board, and do it so that I make sure I'm right before I tell everyone the wrong maths.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were here for last season's finale, we did highlight those drivers who were involved in that top 20 battle, so you'll be able to keep a track of where they are throughout the end of that race. Don't forget, if you want to vote on the overtake of the year, you'll be able to see the top 10 overtakes of the season there. Overtake.gg/PESC vote, and you'll be able to get to see the end of that one. And of course, if you want to keep up to date with everything happening here in the Porsche Tag Heuer Esports Supercup, go to iRacing.com/Supercup today to be able to check out the standings and everything that's going on there. And if you've been watching this and thinking, oh, I want a piece of this, I want to get involved in iRacing, iRacing.com, head on over to there. There's currently 40% off new memberships, so make sure you check that out and get yourself signed up and start your career. Every day's a race day here on iRacing. You may end up even racing against me. But Matt, final thoughts then. Circuit de la Sarthe, it delivered again.
Yeah, absolutely did. I'm glad I made it, first and foremost, because I actually sat down thinking I'd already missed the start, but just jumped in time. And it was great. It was awesome. It definitely has some controversy, and I'm going to be curious to see what sort of action is taken on some of those overtaking moves, not least of which Sebastian being a little bit aggressive in his situation. So it was a bit aggressive at times, but it just goes to show the competitiveness of this series. And I think the drafting was super fun to watch, seeing them fan out, being a bit strategic about it as well, as we saw from the Coanda guys at the front. So pretty cool.
Well, we will crown a champion next time out at Monza. We'll also find out who gets the podium positions in the championship as well. 24th of April. Make sure you join us for the season finale of this and of the Porsche All-Stars as well. It's been tremendous action as always. So from myself, Paul Smith and Matt Trevor and everybody here and the production here today, Will Vincent and Conor Maddock as well for the All-Stars, it's goodbye from Circuit de la Sarthe.